All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James. We're going to be going over every fight from UFC 308, Topuria versus Holloway. And to break down these fights with me, my good friend, the Ohio player, a man who could never win by decision in Abu Dhabi, Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
Oh my goodness, I am here, and there is so much to talk about with this damn card. Holy
Good
shit.
Lord.
Talk about decisions. Listen, I made a decision to tune in, and it was a good one, but little to know there was so many things to come up. We gotta
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely going to.
Shout
So
out
if
Anakin.
you are,
Look at the 308. It was amazing.
hey,
All right, go ahead now.
No, absolutely. Yeah, shout out to Anakin for sure. I didn't even have the chat popped up over there. Yeah, 308 was a very good card. We will get into all of that here in just a second. If you are new to the stream, just so you're aware, we're going to be going over every single fight from this card 308. And if you have anything that is not pertaining to the fight that we're talking about at the time, you can throw it in the chat and we will come back to it a little bit later on in the stream. But to get it started off, actually, before we even go to the fights themselves, let's just intro this a little bit. So this is UFC 308, like I said, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. This took place at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. That's in the United Arab Emirates. What did you think about this card overall as a whole, Chase?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the arena and the location because the crowd was crazy good. This was
Absolutely.
oh my gosh, talk about like when you go from the apex to a card and you don't really realize that there's a difference in the crowd, like engagement, then you get here like, wow, they really love fights. Like they really just want to see fights. I bet if they, I'm not gonna say, you know what, that was gonna be crazy to throw on the podcast. So we'll just move on to that one.
Bro, self-censored real quick. Okay, got you, bro.
This was a great one. This was a great one.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. What I've always said is because there's been a lot of discussion about the money from that region of the world and how it's been influencing the fight game and all sports, really. Of course, this is also a big thing in golf, I believe, with the Live brand as well. I'm not too well versed in all of that, of course. Obviously, MMA is my sport, but what I would say to all of this is that I think that the money that's been flowing into the sport from that region of the world has been a net positive in general because we have gotten some amazing fights out of it. You can tell exactly as Chase was alluding to with the crowd and the atmosphere in general that these people are fight people. They want good fights. They end up getting good fights. There's obviously a lot of money coming in from the region, so that helps things a great deal. I think all of that is very positive. However, there is the negative side that we don't have to go into too much detail on, but I'm sure you've heard about the Chechen guy, the some would say dictator. I think that that's a fairly accurate description. The dude who is with Hamzat, that's kind of lording over Hamzat to an extent there. The one that Justin Gaethje and all those guys were hanging out with, they got into a little bit of hot water over it.
Oh, that guy. Okay. I didn't know
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
the Chechen guy.
Kadyrov is his name. Yeah. So I mean, that is only one. Of course, all of these countries are different. All of their leaders are different. I'm not trying to homogenize the whole thing, but my point of bringing that guy up specifically is that there is a little bit of an argument to be made that some of these countries who have track records politically that don't align with the rest of the world, the United States, however you want to look at it, that they are using sports sometimes to wash over some of those negative aspects. They call it sports washing. Now, you can have your opinions about that one way or the other, and I certainly do politically, of course, but as far as fights go, which is why we are on this podcast and what we are here to talk about, I think that they have been very positive because, as we've said, not only just in MMA, but I mean, obviously, the Turkish guy is also very active in boxing and has now, I think, been inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame because of all of the contributions that he's made to that sport. So, as far as combat sports in general, as a total, like they've been very, very positive, and we've got some really great stuff out of it. Then there's the third component, and what we're going to talk about here on this podcast now, how all of those aspects perhaps equal into what you see in the final product. And I think this is a great card to start getting into that. So we start off right with the first fight. Why don't you go ahead and start us off? This is a Renat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. What did you think of this fight?
Let me halt first because I want to make a quick point that did you notice how many prelim fights that we had? Like none of these were like main attraction cards per se. You know, maybe like RDA on the lower card, you could say that.
True.
But I believe, you know, this is a point to that this is an upcoming market. Whatever you want to say the hometown guys are for Abu Dhabi, because like it's really a collective of countries. Like this is really they just have a lot of different diversity that comes in for people that they support, which is actually kind of cool. Like they're not just all Middle Eastern guys. Like you got some Russian guys, some Polish guys, and they love to see that shit kind of deal. So
yeah, well, they would be. Some would say that that's all tied together by religion. I would think, right?
okay, well, and so like the point is, it's like if that's what we're gonna go with, all these people on the prelims, all of these people having great fights, this just shows the up and coming nature of this community in this sport.
Yeah, absolutely. No, most definitely. And you're making a solid point with that. That yeah, these are not necessarily marquee names on the prelim fights, but a lot of them really, really quality fights. And also, one thing to note too is that for a card that went to decision a decent amount of times, still good fights in that. So I mean that made this a very good event overall, all things considered. So all of those factors equal up to a good card. But I mean, you know, we can get into the nuts and bolts of this first fight, but I think that it kind of needs to be said off the bat that the judging was so ridiculously biased on this card. I don't think there was a clip that I have from my watch along that I've been debating whether or not I want to post it. I think I probably will end up doing it, but it was when this fight happened and they read out the scorecards, and then afterwards they put the graphic of the scorecards on the screen. Anytime that happens on a UFC broadcast, you know that there was a robbery taking place, and it was almost cartoonish that you had, I believe it was Mike Bell, Dave Lethaby, and Hadi Mohammed Ali was the one who gave the 30-27 to Fakhretdinov. And I was like, that is something that you would see on a sitcom. You know what I'm saying? Like this is cartoonish levels of with the way that this is being like unfortunately portrayed. So I say all of that only to say that there are good and bad aspects to all of this. And it kind of manifests itself in different ways. This card, it manifests itself in some extremely biased judging, which I am always the person who tries to push away from that. I always want to believe in my heart of hearts that everyone involved in the sport is going to have the best interests of the sport and fairness and competition, all of those things in mind. However, what we saw in the reality of this card sort of said a little bit different. So I wanted to get that out of the way at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. Because going into the first fight that we can do now,
sure,
this one was so crazy. And not gonna lie, I had money on Reinat, and my opinion was he's gonna go to decision and get. I didn't think it was gonna be a clear coat decision like this for the judges. Watching the fight, when I saw this dude full of acne screaming his ass off, talking about Carlos. I knew I maybe made a mistake because he looked like he was ready to fight, and he was. it was interesting off the bat because going to the Discord, they all thought this was 3-0 for Liao. I think that's how you say it. Um, and I probably would agree, but I was very confident that going to decision, Ryan was going to win this one. And that's exactly what happened. Slugfest or not, Ryan did his thing. He is skating by, and I do stand by this. I'll throw this out first. The next opponent that we see that's actually like a named guy, I think Ryan At's going to get dropped or something because he just cannot fucking defend.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a great point. Let me go into a little bit of the breakdown here for it. What I had in the notes.
Yeah,
Because I think that it tells a good story as to getting to what your end point was with Fakhretdinov taking the decision. Round one was pretty close. Takedowns for Fakhretdinov. Leal striking was clean from the beginning. I really enjoyed the way that he was striking. Well, one thing that Bloomis, shout out to Bloomis as always, well, he was doing the watch along with me, he was hanging out and was saying that Leal didn't even want to go to the ground. This wasn't even one of those deals where it was like, oh, it was BJJ guy versus, dude who wanted to stand and bang. It's like, he was ready to throw hands, and that's exactly what he did. So his striking was clean. It was still a very close round because Fakhretdinov was still pretty fresh. Round two, all Leal. The thing that I liked the most about Leal in that second round and going forward in the fight was that he recognized the level of power that he was dealing with and the level of accuracy in the takedowns that Fakhretdinov had or lack thereof at times, like when he was going for some of the feints or whatever, like he saw everything that he needed to see in that first round. And then he said, I'm not respecting any of that. I was like, I'm on board with this Leal guy. I'm liking everything that I'm seeing. He let his hands go nicely, got a knee in there as well. The knee was really nicely placed. Everything was clicking for Leal in that second round. I think that he tired out in the third round, but not super terribly. But Fakhretdinov, who's slow to begin with, he was already also kind of tired, but he conserved enough to make it a competitive round as well. So going into that decision, you go back to the watch along in that same clip I was just talking about earlier on. I was saying that, this is probably going to end up being a decision for Fakhretdinov. He was landing nowhere near as much as Leal, yet somehow unanimous decision win. 30-27 in there.
Yeah, this one really made the Discord upset because they were convinced. And I also did believe, like I said, I believe Carlos won the fight. He did a better job and he didn't gas out as quick as I thought he would. I'm looking at this dude in the first round. I'm like, he's way too active, way too muscular, way too much acne.
Sure.
There's
well, you keep bringing that up, and I wanted to mention that. Is that what that is on his back? I guess it has to be, right?
It's gotta be. I mean, I don't know. Where do you find these guys on short notice? They obviously are ready to do some hinky stuff to get a fight going, So that's just my opinion.
Well, and I guess we can kind of touch on that just briefly as well, just as an aside. In addition to the judging, there was some talk about there being some weirdness with the weigh-ins as well. So I don't know if that had, I'm talking about pre-fight stuff in general. So, I mean, as far as testing goes, you'd think that the UFC is on top of that. I wouldn't necessarily speculate to that level, but when it comes to the weigh-ins, there was some weirdness. Like generally there's an hour for you get one weigh-in and then another weigh-in an hour later if you don't make. But this one, there was some other time frame or something. Do you know all the details with that?
The main detail that I heard or that I was going with is they didn't let the scale stop when everybody was going on. They actually wanted to say it was only for Hamzat and whoever else, but for most people the scale was still moving and they were just like, all right, good to go.
Yeah, right. I had heard that too. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, more weirdness afoot.
Well, not anyway, because I mean, we'll go into the fight specifically that had these issues, but like there wasn't just weirdness on the scale. There was weirdness in the bouts themselves that got changed to, and then people obviously.
Oh yes, absolutely. We'll talk about
ahead
that.
of time. People weren't going to make weight, so they just changed it and didn't tell anybody. It was so. This was very interesting, and actually, I know some details about what I just spoke about. So we'll get into all these eventually.
For sure, yeah, we're jumping around a little bit. We'll finish back up with the Leal versus Fakhretdinov. I mean, my last point with it, on top of all of what I just said, was that this was really a great fight to start off this card, and it was setting a nice precedent as far as the level of intensity, what you want to see out of a fight, especially one that's going to decision. However, once it actually got to decision, it also kind of set a little bit of a bad precedent thereafter with the decision that we got. Now, I'm seeing in the chat Anakin saying that Leal deserved to lose. I guess maybe there some people have different opinions. I thought this was about as clear a robbery as you could have. This was not a petty theft, in my opinion. This was a legitimate, real deal, full on highway robbery.
I think the only things that I gotta say is you look at the record of Reinat Fakhretdinov, and you're like, holy shit, this dude's probably the best in the division, like 23-1, like, but he's like never faced anybody decent, has he? Like the dudes that he's facing and he's going to decision with are just run of the mill guys that you find on short notice, like Nicholas Dalby. Okay, sorry, no
Yeah,
disrespect.
Dalby, I guess, would probably be the yeah.
I mean, okay,
Kevin Lee, I guess.
He beat Brian Battle. He beat Brian Battle. I'll give him that.
That was also a pretty close fight, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So like when you look at this dude's record and then you're wondering what's next, it's like, why hasn't next happened yet? Why are they, we see a lot of hot shotting. This is somebody that you would expect, like, oh, he definitely would have been fighting for a title by now. But that one loss would have been his title shot type of deal. But no, like something's up.
I just think it's because he's not that exciting, to be perfectly honest. I mean, like, I think that he's not yeah. I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, keep it in perspective. I mean, this was a competitive fight, but it wasn't like he was out there throwing bombs. I mean, like, he landed a couple of heavy shots, but my point is that, like, this was a competitive two-way fight. This was not like a world ender on one side of the equation. Like, I would say that we'll talk about it, of course, but Ibo Aslan would probably be hot shotted over him. If we're going off of that metric, anyway.
We will talk about Ivo later. But
sure.
For Reinat, when you want to talk about he's not that exciting, I kind of disagree. He does go in there and will put on a war. He will swing until the bell. He did that in his last two fights specifically. And he doesn't gas out necessarily as bad as a lot of people who are heavy strikers. He's willing to wrestle. He tries his ass off, especially in this one. He didn't get him, but he tried. And then I'm surprised he didn't sub him, to be honest, because Reinat should be able to sub lower level guys. And then, he will take shots to the chin. Like, he's really, I think Reinat has the mindset of a great fighter. He's just not as technical at times as he should be. He doesn't have the power that he needs to. And he does skate by. And I think these are exciting fights. That's why, maybe that's why we're getting lower level fights for him, because they just want to see him perform. Maybe Shara is the same boat. It's like, we just want to see him perform kind of deal.
And that's fair. We'll see what the next matchup looks like for him. But fights like this to me are a little bit tough to say that I think that the next step is obviously he won the fight one way or another. So the next step is warranted, but it's like, I really personally felt that Leal's stock rose in this fight. I mean, again, I'm thinking that this is a robbery, and I thought that Leal looked really, really good in this fight overall. I thought that he laid on some nice hands. I thought that, even though he did gas a little bit, it was still a really, really good performance in totality. Everything he was doing looked like the correct thing to me. So as far as Fakhretdinov goes on the other side of it, if he's going to continue to have, because you think about it, this is also the same basic description that you could give to the fight with Dalby. It was, I'm not saying that Dalby necessarily won that fight, but the same basic framework of everything that we're saying is applicable to that as well. All these fights are somewhat fun, competitive fights, but it's not showing that Fakhretdinov is like pulling away from the pack. That's what my overall look.
I agree, but it's like, at what point do you just have, same thing. I know I'm going to make a crazy leap here. It's the same thing with Torres Finney. It's like, how many fights does he have to win before you just accept that he's going to beat the people that you're throwing in front of him? May or may not be the competition you need him to be, but he's winning. Okay, some people hate that, Gamrot. It's like, eventually, things are going to have to line up. I know he just lost, but at a time he was winning, and it's like, things are going to line up. You have to give the rightful title shot at some point. Not title shot, but whatever. Yeah,
no, but that would have been you made some good comparisons there, and then the other comparison I was going to throw in is you grind until you get it, just like someone named Bilal Muhammad. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, Bilal Muhammad sitting there winning, denied him and Leon even before that. You know, so it's like, yeah, you're spitting facts over here. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I mean, 23-1, 23-1-1 is the record now. I would think that if he keeps racking up the wins, that yeah, it's probably going to be something like that. You know, knocking on the door until he ends up getting into the numbers and stuff like that. So we'll see what ends
I
up
mean,
happening.
like honestly, let's see. Like, look, dude, be real. Do you know what his win streak is?
I mean, it's got to be in the what, like at least 10, right? Oh God, yeah, wow, holy shit, yeah, no, that is way more than 10.
Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, there is no reason this dude has not had a ranked opponent. Brian Battle, you can argue, like, okay, that aged well, but Brian Battle now, hey, listen,
Well, he's
rematch
over there
that.
crushing cans and fucking, World Eritrea Nash Federation.
I
You
mean,
know what I'm saying? I mean,
I get it, but like, there's no way that you could just have a dude who's undefeated in the UFC just not ever face a ranked opponent or like whatever.
no, yeah, it's coming. I mean, it's definitely coming. The guy has
Oh,
not lost a fight since 2013. So I mean, yeah,
like,
that is
like
pretty fucking
think
nuts
about
to
how
say out
crazy
loud.
that is. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
we're asking for a ranked opponent finally. That should have happened 4 years ago. Like, dude, like what the fuck? Like, hold on. Like, this is
But I
crazy.
mean, he
4 years,
has only been in
obviously,
the
that's way too long. But
he
you
has
know,
only been in the organization since 2022. You know what I mean? So it's I
listen,
think that he's doing. I think that they're doing it right. I mean, this is the right way to do it. I would think that a low ranked opponent is probably correct for him at this point. You know, give him 15 or whatever. I mean, that's
I don't
fine.
know, 33 years old. It's like, why are you wasting all that? I mean, I get, the dude has to sign the contract. He's maybe just taking easy fights. Why not just get an easy check? Listen, get the cash and das. If that's the mindset, I respect it. Why not? But we can move on from him because we've talked a lot about this dude. And
For
shout out
sure.
to him. He should get a ranked opponent soon. Carlos Leao, excited to see what's next. Hopefully he doesn't pop. I'm telling you, that's craziness what he had going on there. But
But yeah, and Anakin makes a good point in the chat that Luque and Magni are still both in the rankings. So, it would be appropriate for this guy to start filling out some of those slots that can drop off. But we'll see what ends up happening. That could be next. You know what I mean? It could be right around the corner. So fair enough, even though I don't think that he won this fight. But
yeah,
you know the deal. All right, moving on. Before we do move on, I do want to shout out everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Anakin46, Rick Allen, appreciate you guys. John Dong, saw you in there earlier. Appreciate all you. This next fight is Ismail Nardiev versus Bruno Silva. What'd you think of this one?
oh my gosh. Elite in the Discord is one of the biggest haters on like low level prelim fighters. When you have faith in them, he has none. And I came out here and without knowing anything about Ishmael, I was pretty confident that, he could do something to surprise me. And the fact that this dude came out here and put on, honestly, a really good fucking performance. Like, the striking that this dude has is really fucking good. It doesn't, like, his record's not showing. Actually, what the heck? This is, hold on, what am I? Okay, yo, he has been in the UFC before. I was, like, very confused. Yeah, it's been a
Oh,
while.
Nardiev, yeah, he was out of the UFC for a little while. I was going to mention that. I think he had gone out of it and then come back. This is like his second run.
Yeah, and I believe he actually went up. He changed weight classes or something. They were mentioning
Okay,
something about it. But
gotcha.
he looked good, especially against Bruno Silva, who I believe is a good striker. At war once was. Honestly, before this fight, I was saying if he loses this, there's not really much I see for him. But this was a good performance for Ishmael, and like I said, decision was coming, and he earned this one. Bruno Silva's not good anymore. It's cooked.
That's the overall point of all of this, I think. I mean, I was kind of getting that feeling that Bruno Silva was about at that point after the last fight. I thought that he put a lot of effort into that losing affair with Chris Weidman, which was nice to see. It was nice to see him still going out there and going after it. And of course, all of the bullshit with that. I did an entire video about all the bullshit in that fight, so we don't need to rehash all of that. But the point is that I thought he kind of laid it all on the line there and came up short. So it didn't look to me like he was going to come back and still have that level of intensity, but man, did he look bad. Yeah. Anakin saying it in the chat and it's absolutely true. He looked absolutely atrocious, unfortunately. And I hate to say that because I don't dislike Bruno Silva as a person. I think he's a pretty decent guy. And again, I think he has gotten the raw end of the deal a couple of times now. I mean, taking the loss to Shara in his debut, I thought was everybody seems to see it the other way. I thought that it was a lot closer than it should have been. And then, of course, what happened with Chris Weidman. I think that he's been kind of getting both sides of the raw deal in a way. It's like he got the new hungry guy, lost that fight, gets the older grizzled veteran who in theory should have been able to be taken out, but then that dude's poking the fuck out of his eyes, all that kind of stuff. He's gotten a lot of negative shit in his recent career. So I'm not trying to take any of that away from the equation, but all of that being said, that's not this fight. This fight, he looked really, really bad.
Yeah, I think Anakin makes a good point. It's something with the motivation. Like I even thought in the fight, like Bruno kind of looked like shit. Like he kind of had like a tummy to him. Like he didn't really look like he was in fight ready shape. And I will give him credit. He defended a lot of takedowns and didn't get subbed. They didn't credit any sub attempts on here. I'm pretty sure there was a good choke in there.
Oh, when he had his back, he backpacked him at one point.
Yeah, so
like, yeah.
Either way, that was good for Bruno for surviving to the bell. That's what I obviously needed on the bet slip. So Ishmael, shout out you, man. I'm really excited to see what's up. Like Anakin, it was a move to middleweight, is what Anakin says. So shout out Ishmael, and I hope to see more from him because the striking was good. Mixed in a lot
absolutely.
Of
yeah, very, very nice striking. Takedown, backpacks, all in round one, got all that going. And I was very impressed with that. What was up with the weird slow twirl that Bruno was doing? That's the thing. Did you not pick up on this?
He walking away. He kept walking away from the thing and then getting bombed on like an idiot.
Yeah, well, it was like he was walking away, but like he would like get out of something and then sort of like do this like almost sachet like movement. It almost looked like he was doing a dance movement there. I mean, like he would kind of twirl his body, but slowly. And it was like, I know Felder picked up on it and was like, bro, you can't be doing that. And then he did it again. And I'm like, dude, you're asking to get fucking knocked out that way. Like you're leaving your hands way low when you're doing it too.
I think Anakin got it, man. I think it's just a motivation thing. Like he's just not in the fight mental game anymore. Like, you got to be, it's cliche, but you got to be ready at all times. You got to be ready to defend yourself. You can't be just turning around doing pirouettes, whatever.
You're right, exactly. Yeah, the bro's out there doing ballerina acts, doing the ballet.
And, Bruno Silva, like, you were coming off a lot of L's, like, before this. You had to come in here with a mentality like, I could actually win. This didn't look like a Bruno Silva who thought that he could win. And you know who because I've seen Bruno Silva against Alex, and that was Bruno who thought he could win. Like, and that's the first time I saw him fight. I thought like, holy shit, this dude actually is pretty good. Like, this is one of the top guys right here. He just like came off a bell, blah, 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 blah. But the fact that he doesn't have that anymore is just sad, to be honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, that's all that I have for it on this one is just that Nardiev did everything right. Bruno Silva, probably time to hang it up. That's just where it's at. Yeah. Sad to say, and good career overall. I mean, it's like you said, he did fight the surging, or not surging at that point, starting to become what would end up being one of the best fighters of all time down the line in Alex Pereira, at the beginning of his run, his ascension. So, I mean, like he looked pretty good back then. And I don't think that he really has anything to be ashamed of in the totality of his career, but you do have to recognize when it's time to stop.
Yeah, I mean, it does say, I will say, if we're going to end on a good note for Bruno Silva, it does say something that you gave Alex one of the hardest matchups of his career. And
right
at where he soon to became one of the greatest of the division, whatever you want to say, like he's really, he did a good job. So shout out to you. You can ride off on the wind on that one.
That exactly. Yeah, most definitely. And again, shout out to Ismail Nardiev for a really solid performance overall, doing everything right.
Yeah.
All right. So next up was Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. I know that you want to talk about the weight issue, so why don't you go ahead and start off with that?
This one was a weird weight issue because I don't even know what exactly happened. I know Victor Hugo missed it by 10 pounds.
10 fucking pounds. 10 pounds.
Yeah. So what was more interesting is that they didn't do a catch weight. They just proceeded with it. they just proceeded along. Fareed Basharat just said, okay, 10 pounds, I guess, whatever. You're 155, I'm 145. I guess that's what it is. And I guess that's just what they did. Because when you go to the tail of the tape, it like had the weight like 138 or 158.6 to 145. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, so it was really crazy to see. I have no idea what happened here. But without being said, wait, do you have anything to add about the weight issue?
Well, I mean, I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify that I believe that this was supposed to be at 135, and then it was moved up to 145, and so Bruno Silva was around 145, and then Farid
Victor
Basharat,
Hugo.
Victor Hugo, Farid Basharat came in and I think that they just let him weigh in at, I believe, 137 or something like that was what he ended up being at, because he was trying to cut weight. So Hugo just walked into this thing without even attempting to cut weight, basically, is the impression that I got. Because, if you miss by 1 or 2 pounds or whatever, obviously you're trying to get down, you're having a bad weight cut, illness, other things can factor into that. But when you come in 10 pounds overweight, looking like you just rolled out of bed, I mean, there was no attempt made. So that was at least the information that I have. I'm pretty sure that was accurate. So, yeah.
And what makes another thing weirder is I don't think this was short notice or anything. I like
No, it wasn't.
This was just a full camped Victor Hugo. He's just like, fuck it, I can't do it, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you guys. I cannot cut a single pound right now. Like, I don't know. And
Yeah.
And so before doing that, like before knowing that Victor Hugo missed weight by 10 pounds with a huge advantage, this isn't a slight advantage, this is huge. And I beforehand thought Victor Hugo has a very good chance here. There was 2 really big dogs on this card. We'll talk about the other one next. But when I saw plus 425, plus 500 on my books, when I saw that for Victor Hugo, I said, oh, brother, we are going to be rich. This guy, he's kind of him. Like, he's really, really good. Going into it, I didn't know the statistics, the numbers to it. When he walked in, he's on an 11 fight win streak or something like that. 11 first round finishes. I'm like, oh my God. Maybe what I saw was like, maybe there's actually backup to it. Maybe this dude is actually what I thought. And he came in here, and I will give him so much credit because I told everybody, put Victor Hugo by finish, whatever you want to do. In your life, this is going to be it right here. And I'm so happy that this dude actually wanted to get a finish. He was trying for me, it felt like. When they got grappled, he went for a sub. He's got him in a leg lock. He's telling him off, like, I'm going to get you in a leg lock. He went for it like 3 times. I'm like, break his leg. Do it, Victor. Do it. When they're on the ground, he's taunting him. He's like, telling him to stand here, punch me in the face, He was trying to psych him out. And he obviously was losing, probably going to lose in decision either way, whatever you want to look at it. But Fareed Basharat, to overcome a 10-pound weight disadvantage, very impressive. I was slighting him. I saw his brother lose in decision earlier this year, and I assumed the same fate was coming because all they do is wrestle and they're not very active. I agree. He's still not very active he's efficient with his wrestling, same as his brother, but the activity, they're not effective with the positioning. They're not getting submissions. They're not, ground and pounding. They're not getting dominant positions where you're like, holy shit, like he's like smothering him kind of deal or anything like that.
Yeah, the way that I look at that is that it's a lot of technicality without the volume and output to make that technicality really full on effective. I mean, I still think that they're both very technically sound fighters. Like, obviously, they're doing their thing. They're skilled, but it's the amount of actual rubber meets the road when it comes to the damage and things like that that are not there all the time with both of them. And that, I think, is going to eventually start to catch up with them as they reach the higher echelons. I also want to praise Hugo a little bit here, even though 10 pounds is beyond unacceptable. It is insane to me that this fight even went on. I think that this absolutely should have been canceled. Shout out to Basharat for accepting all of the terms of all of this, because he absolutely would have been well within his right to not have taken any of this.
I didn't hear anything about a purse deduction on this one, by the way, which would make sense if he did, but they normally mention it like during the fight, like, oh, he did get 20% deducted. And I didn't see anything either. I
If
do
they
know about
didn't,
the
that
other
would
one,
be
but
if
I don't know. Like,
yeah, I gotta hope that was the case. I mean, fucking A, if they didn't deduct his purse, that would be absolute insanity. And I believe that when it comes to that, that's something that the UFC handles internally since it's regarding the pay structure and stuff. So I would think that the UFC would have done that, regardless of the region of the world I'm talking about. But because I'm fairly certain that that's the case. I don't think that the commission is involved in
well,
that aspect of it, but I could be wrong about that. Like, don't quote me on that part of it.
the reason I say that, and we'll talk about another fight later that has this issue, so I'll bring it up, is that there was visa complications that did not let them, get into the country until like the day before, maybe it was a week before, and maybe Victor was just unable to get training or the camp that he needed. And that may be potentially what it was. So maybe that's why purse deductions weren't like whatever you
Oh, I
want to
don't think.
say.
I mean, generally, I don't think that comes into play. Regardless, I'm again, I'm not 100% on all of that, but that to me, it's like regardless of your circumstances, you come in at the weight that you need to fight at. That's the
Well,
rules. That's
I,
the
I
game.
bring it up because the fight that missed weight later with Miktabek, that was what happened. So he didn't get his visa or whatever until the day before. That's why it didn't make weight and they had to move it to a catch weight. So maybe similar things happen. Brazil to, whatever. I don't know. But
I
10
perhaps
pounds is
it's
a lot.
Yeah, again, either way, I mean, 10 pounds overweight is that is beyond unacceptable. We can go on about what the actual nuts and bolts of why that is, for however long that we want to. But at the end of the day, when you're actually inside of the cage, 10 pounds is beyond, I mean, that's an entire different weight class. I mean, like,
Yeah.
so this is insanely unacceptable. But all that being said, the asterisk will be there, but I did want to praise the variation in Hugo's strikes. I thought that he was attempting some cool stuff. Like you said, the leg locks were cool. Sucks that he wasn't able to capitalize on any of those a little bit more if he was going to go for them, because I think that he did try pretty hard to get into those positions. And then once he was there, it was like, okay, what are you actually doing with it? Shout out to Basharat for being able to move with it and not let himself get into any legitimate danger. But Basharat's real strength, in my opinion, is his movement. Like, I think that he's really effective in his use of space inside of the cage. So when it comes to the output stuff that we were talking about earlier, that's what needs, like, there needs to be a meeting in the middle of the two of those aspects. He needs to have a good amount of the movement that he's already proficient at, pair that with effective output, and put a little strength on your shots, bro. That's the other thing that I'm looking at when I'm seeing him and his brother to an extent, is that they're pointing. I mean, it's like, bro, like, go out there and throw a bomb every once in a while. You don't have to do it you don't gas yourself out, but like every once in a while, if you have a nice opening, capitalize on what you got. I mean, like, you're moving, you're expending all kinds of energy to stay out of striking range with these guys. Get in, shuffle out kind of thing. When you're doing your shuffle in, put a little pepper on it,
I want to make a point, and I know the gambling community is not so forgiving on athletes. They are often horrible. And so when I watch Victor Hugo, and I have a reasonable bet for the underdog to finish the fight, easy, no big ask. But when I see somebody come out here and they are fighting like they are the dog and they want to finish the fight, like you earn, like I don't care if you win or lose, as long as you are trying to get the finish for me. Like I don't care. Like you get the respect, money or not. Like I know I'm ready to watch you next, and I will put the money down again. Because if you fight like that, dude, Victor Hugo, he is and he has been one of my favorite fighters, which is weird because he's just some random guy in the fucking bantamweight division.
know?
But like he really is fun to watch. Like I don't know what to say. Like I would willingly put money on him again just to see him try to finish it, or just to see him get frustrated and try to get Farid Basharat to engage with him. Like stand here, like fight me. Like I just doing whatever it takes to try to win the fight. Shout out Hugo. He really is just a man. And I don't know why I like this dude so much. It's a cool name. I think that's probably what it is.
Shares a name with the author of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Little fun fact for you there. But so I did want to ask then, the last note that I had in the notes was that, I thought that Hugo was pretty impressive. You put the weight stuff aside. Basharat fought, I think, a tighter technical fight, basically all the stuff that we've just talked about. So that it depends on how you want to score all of that. you kind of knew how the judges were going to score it regardless. So, nice for Basharat to be able to take this fight, take it to decision, and, make it all work in his favor one way or another. But do you think that this was slight robbery position, or is it not at all?
Oh, no way.
No, yeah,
No,
okay. No.
I think I honestly think even giving 1 or 2 rounds to Victor is kind of crazy. Like
Oh, really? Okay.
what I was watching, like it was hard for me to agree that okay, sorry. When I watch, I'm not judging for myself. Like I obviously have a different opinion. I'm judging who's gonna win based on the judging who's there. So Fareed Basharat, in my opinion, every round had those judges' opinion. So I don't think Victor stole one. Maybe if you want to say round 1, round 2, but by the end of it, like I said, he was frustrated. He was just trying to get into a mental warfare kind of battle with me. So I think he was defeated by the end of it, but he didn't stop trying. And like you said, the strikes that he was landing, the creativity with his striking, he was mixing it up by the end. And he was throwing in that uppercut. He was throwing it to the moon too. He was really trying to land that uppercut. So he was trying. That was really
Sure.
good. I like that.
Fair. Well, and then I think that before we move on, this is as good a time as any to mention that had you put a parlay down on all fighters who were quote unquote favorably looked at by the region, you would have banked on that. Just
Yeah.
putting that information out there. And I'm not saying that this was a robbery or even a petty theft or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that if it's going to decision in this specific card, you know what way it's going. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just, you know what I mean? That's just where this is at. We've been talking about it to death, but it bears repeating because that fight very well could have been in that same camp had it been a little bit closer. But anyway, all right, let's move on. Let's get to one of the unfortunate instances on this card. This is Chris Barnett versus Kennedy Nchezuku. Kennedy making his heavyweight debut. What did you think of the fight?
This one, I will say, I was very upset at this one because I got roped into putting money down on Chris Barnett. I bought into the faith. I'm like, you know, something's got to be great. If everybody in the world thinks that this is fucked up for him to be a plus 500, I can't be wrong. Like Vegas, obviously, they don't know everything. And we didn't have a dog win up until this point. So it's like, okay, I mean, the odds are getting higher. So I ended up putting money on him. And Chris Barnett, in his intro, jumps as high as he can. He actually got it. I swear we just need to crop him out, do a green screen of him and you can do him floating forever. Like it's crazy how high he jumps. Yeah, exactly. So he lands and tweaks his ankle. He swears that was not what happened. He's on Twitter saying I didn't hurt my ankle, blah blah blah, blah. Well, you can see like obviously he winces like ow, like I landed on my ankle weird. And then we go into this fight and I think Vegas understands. They know who the fighters are, and we as the public know who the fat guy who does spin kicks is, because Kennedy was whooping ass. And I'm tired of hearing this narrative. Oh, well, if he wouldn't have hurt his ankle, no, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. There was no chance. The kick was never gonna land. 2, there was no answer Chris Barnett had. Like dude, Kennedy is huge. Like they're talking about heavyweight debut. This was a light heavyweight guy. Oh my gosh, he should have stayed. What happened? What are you doing? Like this guy's a monster. I mean, he might rule the heavyweight for a second because his striking. I mean, I know he did beat up on the fat kid, like sure, but he was beating him down. There was no chance that Chris Barnett was going to win this fight. He's actually thankful he got injured. I give him credit for fighting through it because man, it looked like it hurt. I was even saying like like dude, think about what his ankles go through on a daily basis. This is crazy to me that this dude was in this fight. I feel bad for him. I'm not gonna lie. Because, listen. I think, and don't quote me on this. Was his injury previously like an Achilles or was it something? Because in the commentary, That's what they said. They were like, "Oh, it's his Achilles," and I'm thinking like, this isn't basketball. Like that's not like a common thing you would throw out. Like I maybe that was the injury he had before, and he like re-injured it. I don't know, but I can tell you he was walking on it for a minute, and that shit was hurting my head because like I can tell you, like I said, daily basis what they go through at that moment when he only has one that's working. He's got a flat tire, as they say. Man, that was a rough sight, and he was getting beat on. He was getting the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to go back to the point that you made about getting sucked into the hype, and I think that this is a great example, actually a really really great example of how this sport operates as far as the elements that go into you shaping your own narrative in this sport. Because Barnett over here is, a tiny guy for heavyweight, of course. He's a big personality, and I mean his wins don't necessarily equal up to being like this dude that everybody is rallying behind just by wins alone, even though it is kind of cool that he's the short big guy who's able to get the kicks up. But he cultivates this groundswell around him just based on all of the bigness of his personality to match the bigness of his frame. All that being said, you do have to look at the reality on the ground when it comes to these fights. And I think that this really showed that basically all of what we're saying, even regardless of the injury, that he is just too undersized for the division. He's a fun guy. He's a cool guy. All of those things that you like about him are absolutely true outside of the cage. He gets inside of the cage, and I just don't see it working too much longer for him. He reminds me of a heavyweight Torres Finney.
And that's my thing is like people are like he needs to shout out Anakin. Barnett is too short for heavyweight, and people are saying he needs to go to light heavyweight. It's like, guys, this is not a fighter that is applicable to just change weight classes. Like, where do you guys think all this skin's gonna go if he loses 30, 60 pounds? Like, he's a big guy. He's pretty short. Like, that's still not going to help him. He's just going to face faster competition at light heavyweight that are just probably going to dice him up and kick him in the head. Like, I hate to break it to you, but like, if he were to be competitive at his height, he would have to go down a couple weight classes. Like, and that's just not like gonna happen ever. Like, he's gonna be a heavyweight. If he ever makes light heavyweight, honestly, I would be super impressed because he's missed weighted heavyweight a couple times. So,
but I think that that's my overall point, though, is that he ends up being in this predicament where you got to be very cautious about backing that horse, even though you like him. That I think is the overall point I'm trying to get at here, is that it's like, I think he's a cool guy. Look, him dancing to the cage is fun. His facial expressions and the moves are very entertaining, and he seems like he's got a great personality. I think he's actually from my neck of the woods in some general area. So I'm like, I want to root for the guy, but you just have to be realistic with what you're getting into with a guy like that. So, bet at your own risk, basically. I mean, support the guy till the end. He can fight at whatever weight he wants to fight at. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, but just understand all of the elements, because injury aside, he was getting pieced up. That I think is what's getting lost. I mean, you touched on it, of course, but in the broader discourse about this fight, it's like, oh yeah, man, it really sucks that he hurt his foot, and it absolutely does. Yeah, that's terrible. But Kenny Nchezuku was kicking ass. He reminded me a little bit, and this is not just because they are both of African descent, but Chidi and Jukwani, I believe last week or the week before, where he was able to get him up on the cage and really land some nice shots in there. I mean, he wasn't clinching as much. He didn't have to, but like putting the pressure on the entire time against a guy who was not able to counteract that as readily. So I thought that there are some similarities there in the style, and it worked really well for Kennedy at heavyweight. So, I thought he looked really sharp, put a little bit extra bulk on the frame. I mean, his technical skills are good.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the striking was really good. I mean, again, he was beating up on lesser competition, most likely, whatever you want to say. But What it looks like to me, and shout out to Nostility in the chat. He said that Chris Barnett needs to go do celebrity boxing or go be a can for celebrity boxers. I think, listen, I think you're backwards,
Yikes.
buddy. I think the poachers at Karate Combat should be prowling on all these people that are about to drop out. They can get OSP, they can get Chris Barnett, and their heavyweight division could look good. Whatever they got going over there, sign Chris Barnett. He go over there, do some spin kicks. As long as he doesn't just listen, get him in the pit and just let it work out. Just don't let him jump or run around before the fight. Anything that's gonna, put stress on the knees, the ankles, the back, just get him to the fight and just call it a day.
Yeah,
Not really too
fair.
much. I wouldn't say not. I wouldn't say, or sorry, I would say do not expect a much more competitive career outside of the UFC.
That I think is the basic point of all of this is that it goes back to what I was talking about a little earlier. It's like you like the guy, you want to support the guy. The guy has cultivated a really nice fan base just off of how cool of a person that he is, and that is awesome. I like to see that, especially for a guy who's not a big trash talker necessarily. I mean, he's not doing it negatively, which I always appreciate. My favorite fighters are the guys that don't talk much at all, go out there and kick ass. He's not necessarily going to have all of the elements that it takes to get himself into a position to be the kick-ass guy that doesn't have to talk a whole hell of a lot. So it's like his personality has kind of taken him as far as it's going to go. You got to be aware of what the other side of that coin looks like when he's actually inside of the cage. So
I think Nostility just brought up a great point too. It's like we see these people who are glorified kickboxers and or karate specialists, whatever you want to say, kung fu guys, and they just want to be in the UFC. Like they want to do MMA, but they don't want to develop ground games. Or maybe I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they have it in their heart. Like I could be a great ground guy and they work on it every day of their lives and it's just never going to come. Maybe that's the case. But at some point, you got to be real with yourself. You can't have the yes men around. Is MMA for you when you're Chris Barnett at this stage in your life? I don't know.
yeah,
We'll ask that question about somebody else later too, which is I think a great card that we got two of these people. We got one that's a fan favorite and one that I think it's weird that we'll talk about it. But what is next for Chris Barnett? Are you going to go through another 6 months of rehab, like something like that? Who knows?
yeah. So I mean, really, I guess we're gonna have to see what's next, and hopefully, it's something that's a little bit either a more favorable matchup for him or something that's going to really give him a lot to think about as far as what he wants to do moving forward in this sport or another combat sport.
I just can't believe like no, there's only one. Like you're saying, if he gets a favorable matchup, you could name anybody on the planet. Name anybody else that you could find that's a favorable matchup for Chris Barnett, because I can't think of one. Like I didn't see anything in those moments where I was like, oh, okay, now I see. Okay, there's where hits opening.
Your your mic got a little weird there, pal.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. And I'm questioning like I didn't see anything where it'd be like, okay, there was Chris Barnett's opening. Like there's where he was gonna like thrive in the fight. So you could throw anybody out there, and I just don't think anybody in the heavyweight division. It could be a super can even. It could be anybody you think of. And Chris Barnett is so undersized and so just he wants to throw a spin kick, and that's what everybody else wants him to do is just throw a spin kick.
Well, I think that Anakin just fucking nailed it in the chat, though. Barnett versus Despain. Let's fucking go.
And you know what's crazy? It's like that's probably something that's likely to happen. And one of these days, and it's only likely that Chris Barnett is just going to get knocked out from a head kick because that's just such an easy target. He's just so short. He's in a weight class where maybe leg kicks are not as common, but if Robelis does match up with him and he doesn't get a head kick, like I've lost all faith in the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a favorable matchup would be someone along the lines of I don't want to say this specific guy, but like a guy like a Chase Sherman. Not necessarily him, but someone along those lines. Like, what were the brothers that were fighting at heavyweight for a while there? I forget
Junior
their
and
names.
Justin Tafa.
No, not the Taffas, not the Taffas. God, it'll come to me at some point going forward. But
Um, what I was gonna say,
there's
my
also the
funny
Canadian
joke.
guy too.
Oh,
Yeah, good.
Canadian guy. Oh, well, I was actually gonna say the dude that Rabellis fought first in his first fight probably would be Chris Barnett. But
Yeah, there you go. That's I think that's along those lines. I think that is the Canadian guy I was talking about.
okay. And then, Nostality, Barnett versus current DC was funny, but mine was funnier. I was gonna say Alex Majeda's coach would be a great matchup for Chris
Him
Barnett.
versus
Like, yo,
Polinio Cruz. Let's get it.
yeah, that's what we need. I think
Well,
he would
Polinio
sub him,
Cruz.
to be honest. He would sub Chris Barnett. He's got
Yeah,
the jujitsu. I swear
in a
he's got
fucking
it.
heartbeat, dude. Yeah, Polinio Cruz is a highly decorated BJJ practitioner, so
Is
that
he
would not
is he
be.
really? Like, he
Oh,
just, I mean, I look at him and I'm like, okay, he's just a coach. Like, I didn't think this was like some crazy fucking BJJ level guy. I
I'm
just thought he was the
fairly
translator.
certain.
I don't
No,
fucking know.
yeah.
Like,
No,
okay.
that's his like coach, I believe. I think that they he's a BJJ guy, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm completely off base with that, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. But
Well,
um,
either way,
either way, yeah,
moving on back
yeah,
to
yeah.
Chris Barnett. I hate to break it to everybody who loves him. We should have taken a tally of all the money that we donated, and we probably could have bought like a house or something with all the money on Chris Barnett because we are all so stupid. Vegas knows best, especially with this card. They know what the judges are going to throw out. I don't know how. Maybe they time travel. What's going on there? I don't know. But Vegas knows. So trust them then sometimes.
I mean, sometimes, yes. I don't go blindly into the favorites all the time if there's something that does not make any kind of sense. But generally, the odds are the way that they are for a reason. All right, let's move on from the Barnett talk here. Let's go over to Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. What'd you think?
I knew this was I actually called this one to a T, and I was praying that people listen to me, but the hate for Abus is just so crazy. It makes no sense how you guys. It's probably because he represents Germany. Down to it, maybe that's what it is. But Abus is a great fighter. He does bring a good game to the fight. He has a well-rounded skill set, and he is like they were talking about in the fight. Like Abus was fucking huge in this fight
He was
against
jacked.
yeah, exactly. Like, so he came in here great shape, put on a wrestling pace that again is kind of it's not unmatched in this division because somebody later in the fucking card is amazing at wrestling, but the wrestling that he has is great when it needs to happen and you have to shoot for takedowns because you're getting your head rocked and you got to like just scramble, grab a leg, and then maneuver into those winning positions. Abus has that. The last fight we saw, he had in his last fight, he was more like a Grant Dawson where he controlled the fight with the wrestling, the entirety of the fight, which it showed, in my opinion, the evolution to his gas tank because he was able to make it to the belt. He didn't gas out like everybody swore he would, like he did against Strickland. So this fight came in here. I knew his gas tank was going to be more evolved. I was a little wrong because he did gas out, but that was after taking some heavy shots to Bruno. Bruno, I give him a little more credit. I was counting him out. And I don't know if you noticed this. I wanted to point this out. I pointed that out on the stream. This was not the real Bruno Ferreira. This was a clone. I swear to you, it didn't look like him at all. The tattoos were off. I don't know. Don't question me. But anyway, he did a lot better, and he almost won. And I was very grateful that Abus sunk in the sub in the third round. I was praying for the sub, and I knew he could do it. Shout out him. Abus
Well,
really proved a lot.
before I jump into my opinions here, why do you think that there's a hatred for Abus based on his representation of Germany? Is there some kind of anti-German
I don't
bias,
know.
or?
I don't know. World War II. I'm like, I don't
Oh, you
fucking
think
know.
you think it's that kind
He's
of
like
deal?
the
I mean,
only
shit.
like the only dude that represents Germany, and it's like everybody hates him, and it's not because Sean Strickland beat him. Everybody hates Sean Strickland. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, no, I did tweet that recently that I was saying the biggest loser from this card was Germany because Ilya was born there and he don't rep that for nothing. So
oh,
all of Germany has to get behind Abus and his okay ass win here. But I mean, um, so anyway, though, let me I'll jump into my thoughts on this one. I thought that Fajeda looked okay. It was a slow first round to begin with. I think that Fajeda was slow to start, and then Abus kind of got into his comfort zone because of that. Fajeda found his rhythm more so in the second round. That was when he stunned Abus with the right jab and then the head kick. And then also got a back elbow in there, which was nice. So I was 1-1 going into the third round. Fajeda ends up getting smothered on the ground. And then my biggest thing with Fajeda in this fight was that he weathers this storm of being smothered early on, gets himself up, only to get taken down again by one of the most slow telegraphed takedowns, double legs that like I've ever seen. I'm like, bro, you just put in all of that effort. Granted, he's tired. I understand all that aspect of it, but it's like you put in all of this effort to get out of the situation that you were in, only for a boost to basically just reach out and grab you one more time and then just sink you to the ground. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
that sequence was what led to the submission. That finally that ended the fight. And I was like, bro, if you had avoided that, this could have been a completely different deal. Now, Boost probably would have still won by decision, but it just really frustrated me there that he was able to or not able to get himself out of that.
Yeah, he's a really interesting build. He's got long limbs, long legs, and he uses them well. He keeps distance well. And Bruno, Hulk, he did get that one shot that, knocked him off balance. But like I said, he was able to panic shoot, get the wrestling to where he needed it to be. He was able to make Bruno engage in the wrestling. I think that's what the point that we're missing is he didn't just wrestle, because a lot of people, you can wrestle and you can get negated. Like we saw with who was it earlier? With Fakrdinov. He was trying to engage a lot of wrestling and he was getting shot down on every instance. But Bruno was letting the wrestling get to a point that was too far gone for him to be able to stop it. And then, like you said, at the end, he got into a really deep sub, fought for everything to get out of it. And then he kind of just like took his foot off he was already on the brakes, but he just like let go. And then Abus got this really easy like choke on. It was kind of weird. He kind of just like let him have it. Like I'm done. Just go ahead. So
Yeah, that
shout
might have
out.
been what ended up happening.
Yeah, and so I want to say again, shout out to Boost, man. Like we get to see grappling a lot, but I talk about engaging grappling. Maybe it's because I have money on him, but I thought a Boost did a really good job. And like I said, I'm one of the only people that really likes a Boost. So I thought this was great. Hate him or not, he's winning. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that there might be a case to be made that people were a little disappointed because he got hot shotted and didn't deliver on the hot shotting, but that's not his fault. You know what I mean? Like he's just out here to fight. The organization decides to give him the high level fight after just coming in the organization. That's not his decision to make. So I don't really see the hatred there, and this was a good win for him. So yeah, shout out to him.
I think this is one of those. I don't know what I want to call it. We got to find a name for what these odds are or what these fights are that Dana puts together that are kind of like baiting the fan base. They look at Bruno. They watched him knock this dude's head off last fight for the last like 8 fights. And then they throw him against like one of the most hated dudes, most hated, whatever you want to say, and this is like plus 140 for the dude who's on a 9 knockout win streak. He's definitely going to knock out Abus. And then we watch Abus smother him. Like it, I don't know what to call it yet, but I think this was one where I think they were trying to catch us up. I don't have personal proof of a lot of people putting money on Bruno because I think this was kind of a sleeper fight. But I bet there was a large community that thought Bruno was going to knock this dude's head off, and he almost did. But I think this was a trick by Dana and or the odds makers. I don't know who yet.
This is just all interesting to me because I know that you and me are plugged into different communities when it comes to the conversation in the sport. So I guess you're seeing a lot more Abuse hate than I am because I don't really hear too much about him one way or another. So I don't
It
understand where all of this hatred is coming from.
it's never outright, just like you're never gonna see him on Twitter just like the outright hate Abuse pages or whatever. But it's like anytime Abuse is fighting, you're never gonna they never hear like I'm taking Abuse. You could say I'm taking Abuse and it's like fuck no, I'm not. What are you talking about? Abuse is losing. The only people that I know that would take Abuse are the Shevchenko army, and that's because they're mostly rooting for the wrestling guys from certain regions. So but It's just interesting to me that a lot of people were counting Abus out, talking about his gas tank, which was 2 fights ago. And like Anakin said, he's only lost to Kaio and Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's about to fight for the belt, guys. Again. I just think it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, we'll see if he ends up fighting for the belt. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
We would
All
talk
right.
about that because I have different opinions now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you do. All right. Well, let's keep the train rolling here. Next fight up is fight of the night for sure. It was awarded fight of the night, and I would say that it deserves that. This is Miktabek Orlabai versus Mateusz Rambecki. What did you think of this fight? I'll tell you what I thought before you even start. God damn it, it was a fucking banger.
I want to bring up, I'm not going to talk about dollar amounts because this is not what we do here, but I want to bring up that I hit probably the best parlay that I will ever hit when it comes to UFC, and it involved this fight. So I want to break it down because this is the last leg of it. So the first leg, I had Ryan at by decision, straight bet. Okay. And then I
Mm.
had Ishmael by decision, straight. I had Abus, sub or decision. And then I mistakenly, get this, I mistakenly put Mateus Rebecki by sub or decision. And I thought I thought I was so stupid, right? Because I use a boost on like one of the betting apps. And like, sure, I only put like a really small amount on it. But like, I was like, fuck, I fucked up. Like, but when this hit, brother, I want you to understand life changed. 13,000 plus parlay. Like this was insanity on a mistake that I accidentally made. So that
Well,
was just
congratulations.
listen. I don't think that it was a mistake on anybody else's part. The judging got this one right. I want to say that off rip. And do want to bring up this was a catch weight. We'll go through that. Miktabek stated that he was not able to make the correct weight because he was dealing with visa issues and he wasn't able to get to the Abu Dhabi until the day before. How wherever that got mixed up, how he didn't have visa, whatever. But I think this was an amazing fight. I want to bring up first that we oftentimes will sit here and question, like when a fight gets stopped early, and we sit here and we say, that shouldn't have been stopped, or a fight doesn't get stopped, and we question the referee's judgment. I think, from my point of view, everybody in the Discord, we, for the first time, got one of these wrong. Okay? I collectively agreed that in the moment, we thought this should have been a stoppage, TKO. But by the end of the fight, I think we all agreed that Miktabek, he was there. He was really there. This was not something that we should have stopped. And if it would have been stopped, I think we would have regretted it after we said it and if we would have got it. This was such a fucking war. Miktabek is an animal. Rebecki, though, that guy, for a short little Polish guy, he can really throw down. And this
Polish
was
power.
definitely Polish power and definitely fight of the night. I said that after it happened, and I'm glad that I was right. This is definitely it.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, war is an understatement on this one, man. These guys were going at it from the second this fight started. Uh, Rambecki
It's
has yeah,
Rebecki, or yeah.
Rebecki. Yeah, well, I think that there's an M sound in there, which is very strange and hard to comprehend as well. Rambecki, I believe, but whatever. Either way, Mateusz, he's got like that twitchy style that's almost like always fainting a little bit, which I thought really worked well for him in this fight. He's always moving his head, like he's like, I like that fast twitch style for certain guys. Like it's not every guy that can use it effectively because a lot of times you just look like you're really just twitching for the sake of twitching if you're not throwing effectively. But for him, I think it works really, really well. Also worked well in this fight because Miktabek is a little bit more of a grounded, more calm, collected kind of opponent. So I liked the way that he came out with this. And Orlabai, I mean, this is one of those ones where it's like the immovable object and the unstoppable force. I mean, Orlabai will eat every shot that you throw at him. This guy will sit there and take punch after fucking punch. This was evident by the long ass mouse that was the size of the side of his face under his right eye after the first round. That's just one of the many injuries that ended up happening in this very bloody affair. I believe that the cut on Rambechki it happened towards the end of the second, I want to say, or somewhere in the second round. It might not have been towards the end, but anyway, it was the second round, and I believe that it was by clash of heads, which is slightly unfortunate because he looked so fresh compared to Orlabai going into the third round. But either way, regardless of how it happened, this was going to be a bloodbath one way or another because of how absolutely hard both these guys were going at each other in this fight. And it was a little crazy that it didn't get stopped, but I agree with you completely. I think that it was once you saw Miktabek trying to get back to his feet and able to turn his body away from the shots, I was like, no, don't stop it. That was where my head was at. I was like, because I was in that, we're all watching it in real time on the watch alongs, and we're seeing the same things. I'm like, yeah, this is going to get stopped. I mean, it's got to get stopped. And it was like, oh, no, wait. Oh, wait. No. And then for him to have that as the position that he was in, and then somehow still almost be able to turn it around. He didn't turn it around. He didn't swing it, but to be able to get himself back into a competitive nature at any level after what he had taken there, fucking Miktabek Orlabai, man. I mean, the caveman genes are strong with this dude, and they showed through so nicely in this fight. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the injury to his face, because I 100% think his orbital was broke, or something in his face was broke, and that was very early on in the fight. And he was able to just take it like a champ. And he really, like, he doesn't say much and he doesn't do much. Like, he's not very expressive. And really just lives up to the character that he is. And I know these people get these reputations. Like, this is just, we don't create them in the UFC. Like, this is what they come into the UFC with. And he really is just like, I ain't never met a caveman, but I'm pretty sure this dude is one. And so, like, he acts like he just has that, like with Alex, like, he lives up to the intimidating character that he is perceived to be. And that is something. Like, Miktabek going into this next fight, that you have a dude that is going to eat all your shots. Don't matter how bloody he gets, doesn't matter how many times you punch him without him responding, don't matter how many bones you break in his head, he's going to be in front of you. He's still going to what I think is most impressive too is, like, this was Miktabek striking. This was a striking Miktabek. He didn't get to wrestle. This was stand up, show me what you have on the feet type of fight. And he didn't change the game plan. He 100% in his heart thought he was going to beat him on the feet. And maybe one judge, it was a split decision. Maybe it could have went the other way in a different life. But I think this was a crazy performance by Miktabek. And like Anakin said, both of their stocks go up for this. Like, this.
I was absolutely going to say the same. I mean, this was one of those fights that it's unfortunate that there had to be a winner. It didn't have to be a split decision, but I was kind of glad it ended up being a split decision just to acknowledge how great Miktabek did in the fight. So, I guess Orlabai is also close enough to the region, but not close enough to actually get two judges. But either way, that's just going back to the bias that we saw. But anyway, point is, this was a fantastic show on both sides. I also did want to acknowledge one other thing. Anakin's just spitting all kinds of facts in the chat today, saying that Rambechki needs to be careful of being too aggressive. That is a criticism that can be leveled at him going forward with a different type of opponent. This was a great stylistic matchup in that regard, based on what I had kind of outlined in the beginning here, because he has that fast twitch style. Orlabai is more calm and composed. That clashed really nicely, but a guy who's going to counter the aggressiveness in a different way could be a little problematic for Rambechki. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're betting on him in the future. But both these guys will be back, and I think that both these guys have potential to continue to put on these kinds of fights if they want to, and I hope that they do, because it was great.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, another unfortunate instance here in the next fight. This was Rafael dos Anjos versus Jeff Neal. Not too much to say about this one, but what do you got to say, Chase?
Like, bro, I'm not laughing at the injury. I'm not laughing at the RDA getting injury, but like, I just find it funny. It's like, you see this matchup and it's like a who cares matchup at first, and it's like, oh, this old ass dude, like, going up a weight class, maybe he'll do something, maybe he'll have a career resurgence. And then he goes out there and it's like, he literally just, like, his body just breaks like an old man, basically, is what I saw. Like he just like stepped back and he's like, my knee, and just fell over. It's like there wasn't anything to go off of. Like nothing really happened. Like I really just like laughed that this was such a nothing fight. Normally, when I see injuries in the fight, it's like, no, don't stop it for that, or like, oh my god, oh that sucks. But it's like I didn't see RDA wasn't gonna win this fight, bro. He was gonna get cooked probably. Like it looked like to me that he tried to wrestle. Like he grabbed him and Jeff Neal like shoved him off at one point, and then I think he grabbed him again. I'm pretty sure Jeff Neal like picked him up like a kid and like walked him across the cage for a second, shoved him off. And then they got into an exchange, and then his knee popped. And if I was like, I don't think the wrestling was going to work for him. I think Jeff Neal was going to win this, just like the odds said. But it really did suck, like how quick this fucking happened. And
Yeah.
they this under the rug quick. They were just like, fuck it, just go on with it, get him out the cage, like.
Yeah, on to the next.
Well,
Yeah,
no, they
yeah.
actually. I wanted to say they didn't give like. I mean, obviously, no. I don't think they give Jeff Neal like a post fight speech. Probably not. And then they got right into like an
Oh, they did.
Ilya Net promo, and like that was like the next thing right after. So maybe
Yeah.
I missed the post fight thing, but yeah, they got that over with quick. And then they got into like a huge Max and Ilya promo that we watched for like 5-7 minutes. Like,
It's true. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They definitely had the promos on deck for the fights that ended quickly. I mean, to Jeff Neal's credit, he was doing pretty okay before the injury happened. Like you said, he was shrugging off some of the wrestling attempts. He had a really nice combo that dropped RDA. That was part of what ended up leading into all of this, whether or not it was actually the inciting incident to lead to the injury or not. RDA popped something in his knee. That's a very unfortunate thing. But either way, Jeff Neal was doing exactly the right thing, and I actually wanted to give Jeff Neal a lot of credit because this is what I'm hoping becomes more of the meta in the sport, but he did it perfectly, is that when he had RDA down, and felt confident that his striking was doing what it needed to do, he said, get the fuck up. That is what you should be doing. You don't need to follow to the ground every single time that you have a guy dropped. Step back. The referee is asking him, up or down, up or down, up or down. He said, get up. That is exactly what you should do. So I thought that Jeff Neal fought a very intelligent fight for as short as it lasted. But sad for RDA. And RDA is the fighter who is what led me to coining the term candy cane record. So, RDA has been red light, green light on the record for as long as I can remember now in the last, the current era of the sport. And I'm kind of siding with the reasoning that it's time for him to hang it up as well.
Listen, I know we often, I'm going to say, we feel bad for RDA. Hopefully you get ready, get healthy, get ready to go if you're going to come back and do it again at this weight class. But I think what we fail to feel for is Jeff Neal. It's like he did this whole camp and then he got a minute fight out of it, but his stock doesn't go anywhere from this. Now he has to think, am I just going to get the same level of competition? Am I going to have to fill in on short notice for me to get that push now? That's what I think is going to happen now is he's going to be on the back burner. Like, we'll give him a chance. Like if somebody falls out of a big fight, that's when we're going to throw Jeff Neal in there. And maybe he'll take it. Maybe he'll want, better circumstances. But like, if this was a convincing win, it's like, oh, Jeff Neal on the way up. Okay, what's next? But now it's like, we got to throw him against somebody similar to this guy, right? Like there wasn't anything here. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Jeff Neal is coming off of a pair of losses, right? I mean, this is
Ian
before.
Gary.
Yeah, and then
And no, he beat Luque. Yeah.
oh, right, the Luque fight. I forgot about that.
Oh wait.
Well, no, yeah,
No.
right, no, yeah, Shavkat was in there. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
Oh,
I
that
was
was
correct.
Buckley who just beat Luque. Sorry, I was gonna make a bad joke.
Yeah,
But
no, he beat Luque before that, and then Shavkat and Gary. So I mean, he is coming off of two losses. However, they are two that are very high up now,
yeah.
and I mean, one's definitely God, it has to happen. One is getting a title shot, and the other is jockeying for one. So it still kind of keeps him in a good part of the conversation. But you are right; it's not a needle mover for him, which is unfortunate. That is true.
When I look at it now, I mean, RDA, if he wasn't by name a legend of the sport, This is kind of disrespectful to Jeff Neal. This is a dude not even from your weight class, and they just throw him against you. You're not like a can. Like you're somebody who's just now. You just fought Shavkat, who's about to fight for the belt, and you just fought Ian Gary, who's gonna fight for the belt here soon. It's like this is a crazy matchup. This isn't like okay. This is like Max BMF. Like he's going to the BMF, which is title whatever. But like this is RDA to Jeff Neal. It's like if it wasn't RDA, that's kind of crazy. They threw this guy against you. Not gonna lie, but
Oh well,
you
yeah, no, it
didn't.
was
Yeah,
only because it's RDA. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It's just
So
he got it off the name recognition. But I mean, I think that that's also a good point to bring up based on what I was saying about his record. Is that I think that it's probably time that the name recognition doesn't get you that kind of advantage anymore, bro. I mean, it's been too on and off, and I really do think that after that, it's like you said. I mean, I don't want to put that on him. I'm an old man too here, so I'm looking at it not trying to diss him in any respect for his age, but the injury, if you looked at it, it really wasn't. I mean, like he went down in such a way that it was like it kind of just happened. It wasn't off of anything specific. It was like it was either something that had started earlier in the fight, possibly came in with it, but I don't think so. It's just a conglomeration of all of the things that happened that just led him to take a step back, and then something popped. Those are the kinds of things that happen as you get older in this sport. This is a brutal, unforgiving sport. And your body just your mind wants to keep up. That's why when fucking Glover Teixeira is talking about coming back, I'm like, bro, fucking big red stop sign, homie. Come on. Got to be real with yourself here. So this is, I mean, I don't want to say that RDA is necessarily in the exact same camp as that, but I got to say that it's probably time for RDA to do it, to hang it up.
yeah, 100%. And Amir, we're gonna get to what you just said here in a few. Don't forget. But either way, yeah, Jeff Neal. Hopefully, there's something up for him, and I hope he doesn't have to take a short notice fight to get the rank move that he needs.
I would agree with that, and I do think that it would be very disrespectful if that was the case. I think that actually Anakin was saying that Neal versus Burns makes a lot of sense if they want to do that. If even if Gilbert Burns wants to stick around, which something tells me he'll probably want to take a fight or two more. So do that. Establish himself over someone who is more established in the weight class or reestablish himself, I guess is a better way to put it. When I'm talking about Jeff Neal here, get a win over a guy like that's in the same basic category as RDA as far as where they're at in their career. And then at that point, you can see if something in the top 5 makes more sense, going forward.
Yeah.
So, but yes, Amir, we will absolutely come back to that point, and you can gloat all you want because you do deserve it. But all right, moving on to the featured prelim here. This is Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Sequeira, I believe is how you say his name. Doesn't really
Yeah.
matter because you don't really have to say it too much after that performance by Ibo.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that it was very odd to me that Ebo was the featured prelim. It's like I've seen this dude fight one time, and it's against the dude that he got choked out in a different promotion by. And when I watched the fight with the Pleasure Man, I watched a guy who punched himself out very, very quickly, and then got a very, very lucky shot, dropped him. Sure, ref stepped in, but I don't think the Pleasure Man was done fighting after that. That's exactly what happened in the first fight, and it went to the ground, and the Pleasure Man subbed him. So, whatever you want to believe about that fight, I go into this fight thinking Ivo's not as impressive as I would like to believe. And coming in at a coin flip, it's obvious that they weren't thinking so either. He's most likely going to throw a bunch of punches and gas himself out. And I was wrong because this dude, Rafael, came into this ring crying, mind you, walked to the ring crying, got into the cage, and decided to throw one punch, land one punch, call it a career. He's actually in the record book, 100% strike totals. I mean, that's what it is. One of one.
I don't remember seeing him. Was he tearing up on the way to the cage? That was
He was crying his ass off. He was like,
huh.
yeah, it was
Oh,
bad.
okay. One of those kinds of deals. Yeah, taking
Yeah.
it in. Well, hope you enjoyed your time in the cage in the UFC because we'll see how long that ends up lasting. But yeah, I mean, look, it was the Ibo Aslan show, man. I mean, one jab started it, crazy heavy flurry finished it. He smelled blood. He knew what to do. TKO on the feet. What were your thoughts on that?
I think
Because you're,
Rafael. Listen, I listen.
Mister Never Stop It on the feet over here.
In my opinion, I mean, he could have kept getting punched if he didn't want to drop to the ground because, like, he wasn't gonna retaliate. Like that was he could have kept getting punched. If that's my opinion, if we want to bring it to this, I think that's a valid point for me to say. He wasn't going to the ground. He was guarding, but he wasn't doing anything. So he could have kept getting punched until you go to the ground. I mean, shit. And Ibo probably was going to punch himself out once again. This was the early signs of me being 100% on the dot were there. Just Rafael is just, I came in at undefeated too. What the fuck? Like, that's crazy to me.
Crazy way to lose your O for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, look, either way, going to the ground, stop or not, there's nothing that you can say about a performance like that, except for exactly Chase's point that does not give you the full on impression of the fighter. So always be cautious with your bets when it comes to using that as your basis for going forward, because you're not getting all of the other aspects of a fight where the opponent can overcome that type of a flurry early. Obviously, he has the power in his hands. Obviously, he's willing and able to use it early. That was a striking version of Hamzat, who, of course, we'll talk about. But you got to think about what the entirety of the fight will be versus a different competitor. So just be careful is all I'll say. But for this fight, this time right here, yep, Turkish power did prevail, and it was really nice to see.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out Ibo. He proved me wrong, but I was definitely not going to take him on a coin flip.
Yeah, and be careful about coin flips going forward for that exact reason.
Yeah.
You know. All right, moving on to main card, we got Sharaputin Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. First double back fist in UFC history. Am I hearing correctly?
Um, Probably in the way that Shara did it, but I can tell you there's been plenty of back fisted thrown after back fists and they weren't landing, but just people spinning in their shoes. But yeah, no, this was a crazy knockout. It was one of those ones where you're watching and you're getting to the point where you're starting to think everybody's not everybody, but at least the people I was listening to. Oh my gosh, here goes Shara. He's not anything, but he sucks. He doesn't do anything. It's like, guys, this guy's actually a knockout artist, which is something we don't want to like accept. He can knock people out and do it creatively, as we just saw. Because when he fucking did it, like when he did the spinning back fist and then hit him again with it, you have to like sit here and think like, what did he just hit? Like, what did he hit him with? Like, how did he do that? Like, because we've never seen it before. And then when you see exactly what happened and you watch Armin's like he gets hit in the face that he makes is like, I don't know what I just got hit with. And then he falls to the ground and obviously it's done after that. So it was a crazy move. I think this was insanity by Shara. So shout out him.
Yeah. So I think that I have been among those people who has been a Shara skeptic. I would not say a hater, not a hater. I would not say a hater. Maybe you can view it otherwise, but I have been skeptical of the level of skill that this guy has had based on what I've seen from him. What I've said time and time again coming into this fight is that I need to see something that is going to sway my opinion. Something like that certainly does help. I will absolutely give him all of the credit because that was pretty goddamn nuts to go from one-sided back fist to the other in the same movement and actually make it work. I was pretty impressed. And also I like the fact that Armen Petrosyan had just thrown a spinning back fist of his own not too long before that. So it's like, oh, you think you can do that? Well, I got news for you. I can do two of them. So
Yeah.
I liked that aspect of it. The only thing I will say about Shara that continues to make him a little bit of an anomaly to me is that it finally clicked to me what I see in him that gives me pause. And it's that he fights both cautiously and cavalierly at the same time. Like he fights somewhat restrained in the first round. I thought he was going to try to point fight throughout most of this thing. He got rocked at one point. Petrosyan did rock him in the first, but then decided to clinch for some reason. Low IQ move on his part. That can stay to the sideline. But round 2, both of them kept throwing high inside leg kicks. That was, a little bit of cup checking situation, whatever. My point is that Shara, he both has this like attack mentality that gets a little bit wild at times, but then also this restrained quality as well. And you saw that very much so in the Olashaychuk fight, I think, like where it was like he would go in, he would do what he needs to do occasionally, and then it would be this pull back, this push and pull thing that it's like I just want to see a higher level of technicality out of the guy, but I guess it doesn't matter. So maybe I'm just fucking nuts.
When I think of like what it takes to be great, or when I think of championship like materials, I oftentimes think of like creativity. Like you have to have a certain level of like they don't know what to expect, you have to have that X factor, be ready to pull anything out your ass. I think Shara has that. I don't know if he has the other qualities that I would say a champ needs in this respective promotion, but he does have the creativity factor, he does have the power factor, because it's not like he's just creative and it's just like, oh, he just did a spinning back fist. It's like, no, he knocked him out with the spinning back fists, plural.
Yeah.
So, like, it could get annoying when you watch somebody who's not landing all these fancy strikes, who's just doing a bunch of bullshit, and it's like not working. When it comes to like Michelle Pajeda, similar thing, very creative and has a lot of skills that you would say like, these are materials that I would want for the highest level. But then there's also parts of them that are not. Shara, different lacking abilities or deficiencies, but I think Shara has that creative factor. And obviously, why would I need to bring that up? It's just like that's something to keep an eye on. It's like there's nothing that you can expect. He can always just pull something out to knock somebody out, apparently.
Yeah, unpredictable is certainly a good way to put it. And it paid off in a big way here. So I can't be mad at that. I thought it was pretty goddamn impressive. And to do a move that ostensibly could end up being named after him, I mean, that's also pretty impressive.
What would you call it?
The bullet, I guess, right? I don't know.
Oh, I mean, okay. I mean, I figured. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Shevchenko's the bullet too, so that's a little bit of a hard one. But
yeah.
I mean, either that or the Shara back fists. But that's a little bit weird, too many syllables in that with the extra
the
S
spinning
there.
Shara. That's what they call it.
That's not a bad one. I'll take that.
And Deadly Pubes wanted to ask, KO over the year. I think it's possible, since it's the first time we've ever seen it. They'll probably drool over the fact that it was the first ever double back fist knockout, but I still think Vinicius Oliveira, that last second flying knee was
that was nasty. Fuck. Hell yeah, dude. But this is, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and if we're gonna do 4, I mean, they'll throw an Alex one in there, like, oh my god, Alex knocked out Yuri, KO of the year, which probably maybe. And then they'll have Ilya up there. I'm sure.
Hill over that. I would think, I think Jamal Hill would probably be the better one for that, just because he did the weight. I'm about to knock this motherfucker out.
Yeah, probably just for the meme value. That like, that one's it. But like, I think he did Yuri way worse. But
Oh well, yeah. I mean, as far as as far as the actual knockout itself, I think that's probably accurate. But no, and look, the point that I was going to make piggybacks off of that anyway is that this is certainly highlight reel material. It reminds me of the Buckley kick. You know what I mean? The kick knockout. The mule kick. So it's like these are the things that you need in order to rise your stock in a general sense, because he already has this weird aura that people are buying into with him. That certainly builds it up. I just think that you should still be a little bit cautious. I'm not trying to be a hater. I really am not. I'm just going off of what I'm seeing with this guy. And the fact that the unpredictability works both ways at times. And not, for so far, it's worked out really well for him. So I'm not trying to take away any of the accomplishments that he has achieved here with all of the wins that he has gotten. Just be prepared for a different level of fighter. I mean, I wanted to ask you too what you thought about the Adesanya call out. Obviously, Adesanya probably going to end up being booked somewhere else. So, well, actually, no, he's already booked with Kaio. So, I think that's official. I don't know if that's just been floated or it's not official.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Carter thing.
Oh, could have been. All right. Well, I thought that was either going to be official or at least it was rumored. So whether or not that comes through, we'll see what happens. But my point is that you get him up against some of these guys who are just a little bit more skilled technically, that maybe the unpredictability doesn't end up mattering as much. And you compared him to Michel Pereira, saw what happened with Fluffy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I want to say also that you brought up his call out. I'm surprised you were able to pick up on anything he said. Shara might have the worst English that we've seen on the mic, and
That was great.
it's I hate to say it like that because I sound like I'm being like super fucking demeaning, but like, bro, his shit was bad. We've seen some people butcher some English, but like that was really funny. I didn't see it in the moment because normally when the fight, I'm normally doing other shit when the fights are over, so I normally catch the post fight stuff later. But this one was really funny by Shara. I also wanted to make a point when I talk about things that champions have. I think to be great in any athletic sport, you have to, and this is gonna sound crazy, but like you have to know that you can't have long hair. Shara is going to keep running into this issue where he's gonna fucking keep moving his hair. He's got this long, greasy hair. I listen. I have the same wavy hair. I get it. When you want that little bowl cut or whatever, it's gonna be in your face no matter what, dog. It doesn't matter how many times you wave it before the post fight, how many Vaseline swipes you do, just get a haircut. Most of the great athletes that are all-time greats, they're bald for a reason. They just know you can't have it. You just can't have the hair. Look at Derek Lewis. He just knows.
Okay, fair, I guess. But to that point, actually, I could mention that Paddy Pimblett specifically started to braid his hair because of the issues that you're talking about. He was thinking that the judges were seeing the motion of his hair when he was getting hit and thinking that the damage was heavier than it actually was. So he decided to braid his hair to stop the shifting and everything of the while he's getting hit. So
Well,
I mean, I guess that there is a value to that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, fun fact, that's like an old wrestling thing. That's why they have long hairs, because the impact looks heavier when they hit the mat. It's like that's what this shit is. So I'm not saying it's like what Patty said is very valid. That's going more into it. That's a very more in-depth viewpoint of it. But from Shara's, like for Shara specifically, like dog, if you're going to be moving the hair through the fight like this, just fucking cut it. Like, just get a little trim. Like, it's whatever.
Especially considering that he only has one good eye to begin with.
Which I don't know if you noticed, he did get poked in it. Like, his eye was jacked up in the.
Was that the good eye though, or I thought it was the bad eye?
Who even knows, man? Which eye is the good one? Is it the one that looks good, or the one that looks like the cat, the alley cat thing? Like,
right, the milky eye is the bad one, my guy.
So I don't know why people keep trying to tell me it's the other one, because the one that was the good eye supposedly was like really fucked up, and he was able to be fine without it. But yes, yeah, I think the hair thing is a very important thing when you're trying to aspire to greatness in any athletic sport. You just got to get rid of it. Some people you're just built different if you want to be great. Char's going to learn a lesson one day, and maybe he'll lose judging and they'll be like, oh, he was taking too much damage and he won't have a drop of blood on him. I don't know. Maybe that's foreshadowing.
Could be, but I do have to highlight the GOAT Andrei Arlovsky, who did have the long hair when he was a champ. So fucking theory debunked.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, well, we'll see what ends up happening for Shara. Good win there with the double back fists. But moving on, we got Dan Ige versus Lerone Murphy, the fight that I was looking forward to the most on this card. What did you think of this one?
This was interesting. I bet everything on this to be won by unanimous decision, and I was pretty worried that this was going to be split. Dan Ige did a lot better than I thought he was going to do. I don't know why. I went into this fight and I'm thinking like Lerone Murphy, somewhere down the line, we got to see the English wrestling, right? Like we got to see, like, this is what they do over there. They have some good wrestling. When's it going to show for Lerone? And I thought he was going to implement more grappling and like try to go for some submissions. I know that's crazy to say on a dude who's never been finished, but you're not going to knock Dan Ige out. And as we showed, don't stand with Dan Ige either, because he's going to drop you like fucking, oh my God, he can drop nukes. And it's crazy because we've seen him at different weight classes. Like we've seen him drop these bombs. He went up to 165 for Diego, and he was putting some good shots on him. He back down to 145. We saw him, bounce Andre Fili's head off the mat. We just saw him drop Lerone Murphy, who's 14-0 at the time. Like, that was probably the worst it's been for him. And he
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
talk about in the
definitely.
post. He talked about in the post fight speech, like, oh, it wasn't anything. I just like, just a little hiccups. Like, brother, you were like face down. Like, that was bad. And so shout out Dan Ige. I hate that he keeps racking up these L's, man, because like, what can you do with a guy that's only going to keep losing when you only throw him against dudes that he can only like skate by against? I don't. It's just hard. It's a hard
Yeah,
one.
it sucks because I mean, early on, Ige was really laying it on. I mean, this was a very, very close fight, very competitive fight. Really up until the very, very end. What I have in the notes, and I think is still the truth, is that the deciding factor of this fight might have been the last 15 seconds of it in the third round, because I had it 1-1 going into the third. The third round was very wrestle heavy, and it was pretty much all Ige, with the offensive wrestling. Lerone Murphy trying to, kind of stay in there. I mean, he shot awkwardly for a double leg, but Dan scrambled through it. I mean, like, it was a lot of sequences like that, continuing this back and forth that they were doing. So it wasn't really like, I mean, it was more so on Dan's side, but it was kind of just all over the place, so to speak. And then Lerone Murphy got off a nice little flurry right almost at the clapper. So I mean, you could kind of hang that entire fight on those last 15 seconds to an extent. And you're right, that shows the toughness of Dan Ige throughout all of this. I mean, Lerone Murphy, this is a fight that to me gives me a lot of pause, because I have Lerone Murphy, or going into this fight, I had Lerone Murphy picked to be a possible champion. I wanted to have that as one of my early predictions. Be like, keep an eye out for this guy. This could be your next English champ. After seeing what he did to Barbosa, I was like, this guy really could be the real deal. And I don't think that he's not necessarily the real deal. It's like he said in the post fight, his interview. I mean, at the time there, 14-0. I mean, like now 15. He, I mean, he's still early in the sport, so it's like he does still have time to learn, but he needs to learn quickly because he's shooting up in those rankings. So it does suck for Dan Ige, because it's like, this dude is such a warhorse. This guy is a tough fucking guy. Love watching him fight. He's an entertaining fighter. Did look like he gassed a little bit. I don't know if it was just because of the amount of intensity he was having to put in to do what he was doing, because it looked like maybe around like the second round he was already starting to really show it, but stayed in there up until the very end. Like I said, Lerone pretty much had to pull it out in the last 15 seconds. So a good win in the end. I'm glad that this decision went correctly. Of course, neither of them are from anywhere near the United Arab Emirates, so the decision was probably going to be accurate. And I think that this was an accurate decision all in all. But Murphy needs to be careful just going forward. Learn from this fight. Learn from this fight.
Yeah, Elite is very adamant that Lerone Murphy is one of these guys that will just figure it out. Like, he is 100% destined to believe that you put Lerone Murphy up against Ilya, these two forms right here, and Lerone Murphy will figure out how to win. And whatever you want to say, we have two people like that in the division right now. If that's what you want to believe, that's the story we're going with Lerone. Look at the person who's up ahead of him in the division. You got Mosfar, one of these guys that just knows how to win the fight. Doesn't matter, it's going to go to decision, sure, but he's going to get the nod. And it comes down to those later rounds. Like Lerone Murphy, like you said, that last 15 seconds, he was able to just figure out how to switch the position over, get that last flurry in. Mosvar and Lerone, they may be the toughest task for Ilya. I don't personally think so, but these are what we have next in line. So it's only a matter of time before one of them get the shot, and we figure out if they can do whatever it takes to win. And if Lerone is the one to get that opportunity, I'm not sold after that performance, because Dan Ige is no world ender. And if he puts you face down, listen, I got a dude later on in the card who just did it to a dude who's never been finished also, except he finished him. That's so, like,
Yeah,
I don't
well, and
know.
I mean, shout out to Toby in the chat saying that Ige fumbled the round one finish. I don't necessarily think that that's 100% accurate. I mean, I think that Murphy was there enough to get himself to a position that he was able to withstand what could have been a round one finish. But either way, it's not a great look for someone who is certainly surging right now. Now has wins over two really decently high level guys. I mean, even if Ige is not the world ender, he is still somebody who has a lot of stock to his name after the fight with Diego. So there's a plenty of potential for Murphy to continue moving up quickly, and the guys that he's going to be facing going forward are going to be more powerful, more technical, better gas tanks. I mean, everything that Danny Ige lacks is what the rest of the division has going forward in the rankings. So it's like I said, this is a fight that gave me a lot of pause and contemplation about my assessment of Lerone Murphy. We're gonna have to see how he comes out in his next fight.
100%. And you know what you just said about Lerone Murphy just then is what I have to say about this next fight. So we'll
All
get
right,
into
well, let's
that.
move on to it. This is Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Go for it, my dude. What'd you think?
I'll start with Rakic because I look at Rakic and when I see this dude in the cage, I'm like, holy shit, this dude is ginormous in great shape. He does everything so technical. He's very sharp. He's got it, but he just doesn't. He never does. Like I'm watching him fight and it's just like, okay, you're doing it, but you're not doing it. Like just do more. Like do more. Don't come out of your corner having the coaches lie to you saying you're up 2-0 when the
That
dude
was
that you're
insane.
that was weird considering that Ankalaev wasn't even doing anything in this fight. Talk about a fight that gives no stock to either person. If there could be two losers, it would probably be this right here. Like Ankalaev needs another fight. Get Jamal Hill. Like, dude, I'm tired of it. Like, I know you were just about to fight for the belt. If this is what you were coming with, nah, you were done, man. Khalil was gonna give a better performance than you because this is really bad for Ankalaev. And I think of him as a okay, not think of him. He is a striker. Like he is 100% a striker. He's going to stand on the feet and throw punches, but he's just not fucking great at it. He can knock people out with a straight left, but once he's not setting up the straight left and Rakic is just not really doing much either, standing on the outside, that's a very boring matchup. And Ankalaev isn't. If he's not able to engage the way that he wants, it's just going to be boring. It looks like. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you're nailing all the points that I was basically going to make. I mean, this fight was a little bit boring, to be honest. I mean, like, not the worst that I've ever seen, of course. I mean, it was fine for main card, I would guess. I mean, this probably the level might have even been feature prelim level of competition, but it still was decently competitive to, and with the position that both of them are in, I guess I understand it. I expected Rakic to be a lot faster than he was, because Ankalaev is kind of slow. I mean, like he's not super fast himself. So I was hoping that Rakic was going to come out with a little bit more determination, a little bit more of an urgency to it. First round close because it wasn't super active on either side. Ankalaev ends up taking the second round and ended up wrestle fucking a lot of the third round, which it's like exactly what you said. I mean, if this is supposed, like we talk about needle moving in this sport, right? Things that are going to move your stock one way or another. And this is the guy who has been talking about how it's his time for the belt, his time for the title shot, this and that. If this is the performance that you're putting on, thinking that that's going to be enough to get you that shot or get you that belt, really more accurately, it might get you the shot. But if you think that this bullshit is going to stand with Alex Pereira, I have a very rude awakening for you, and it's in the form of a right hand from the hands of stone. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's really not too much else to say about it. I mean, it's the right decision in the end, but there's just nothing here. There's not enough to say that this dude is somebody who even really deserves to get that shot. It's like, I mean, it's one of those situations like what we were talking about with Fakhretdinov and all those other fighters earlier in the card, that it's like at some point you got to give him the shot because he does keep winning. So I guess theoretically he is next in line based on all of that. But he even said himself that Dana told him, you got to go out there and make this one a memorable fight. You got to put everything that you have on the line. And if this is his best, then it's not good enough. And also the other point that you said, that really one of the biggest points is that he has this perception from a lot of people, because you hear me on this very show talking time and time again about there needs to be a guy who can actually effectively take Alex Pereira down. He gets this perception from a lot of people that he is this big wrestling guy that's going to be able to do that and do it effectively. But you're right, he is more of a striker who occasionally has to wrestle. And it's not that's not the type of fighter. We need a light heavyweight Jailton Almeida to go up
Yeah.
against, to go against the type of fighter that Alex Pereira is, and he ain't it. So I'm just like, light heavyweight is just kind of fucked right now in this regard, because you just don't have a skill set that is going to challenge Pereira in the way that he needs to be challenged. And Ankalaev really proved that with this fight. So whether or not he gets the title shot or does not, it really is almost arbitrary, in my opinion.
Yeah, isn't that crazy that we're at a time where we're questioning like who can the champion fight? It's like if this was any other era, hell, he's gonna fight the next dude in line. I mean, whether it's a mismatch or not. I mean, if it's got to be Rakic and we're gonna have to watch him get knocked out, I mean, that's what's gonna have to happen. You're in the rankings for a reason, brother. So Ankalaev, if it's true to be that you are the next one in line, and Alex doesn't try to go get another belt or go back down or whatever is about to happen, thankfully, though I don't want to say thankfully in Alex's regard. It would be cool to see him go to a different division and get another belt. But I think heavyweight's tied up. The one below him's tied up. So it's good that he has to stay here. But like you said, who's he going to fight? If it's got to be Ankalaev, he's just going to have to get killed real quick. I mean, that's just what it's going to have to be. Make
Yeah.
a statement. It's like, if there's not going to be comp, you guys better raise your fucking skill level because Alex is the champ. And if you're just going to let him have the belt it would be a crazy thing to think like if we had this if we had this idea or this memory that there was a year or 2 years where there was just fighters that Alex couldn't fight because they weren't good enough. They were just gonna a year, 2 years is crazy to think about, but a year where nobody would fight Alex because there just wasn't anybody good enough. And like we would remember that Alex held the belt for that time period because he couldn't have competition or whatever that may be.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, going off of what Amir is saying in the chat here, I wouldn't go that far to say it's not a sport. I mean, MMA is the sport, of course, but it is true that it's not merit based who ends up getting the shots and who ends up fighting who. It's the organization decides that, but that um, that dynamic that they're in right now with what you just outlined with Alex, it does allow him to kind of have a little bit of movement as far as other divisions and that kind of thing. So, I mean, there is potential there for something to get set up once those other divisions sort themselves out. But either way, I mean, we're just entering an era right now of A, very much changing of the guard, and B, very dominant champions. And that's just going to be what it's going to be until somebody really steps up. So start sharpening your blades out there, boys, because that's where you're at. You want to be the
Yeah.
best. You got the best to beat now.
Yeah, 100%.
So, we'll see what ends up happening if Ankalaev ends up getting that shot. I would suspect that he does, but I don't think anybody's really looking forward to it. All right, we gotta talk about it. This is we've gone for a long time on this card, which is okay because it's been putting off the co-main and main events, but we're here now, so let's get into it. It is Robert Whitaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. What'd you think?
I think I alluded to it earlier, and I'll bring it back up. I think I changed my mind. Sean Strickland should not be fighting for the belt next. I think give it to Khamzat. I gotta see what he does to DDP, and then after that, then Sean Strickland. Sure, I don't give a fuck, but I think Khamzat, what he did to Robert Whitaker right here, it was brutal, and when I say brutal, I mean it because the pictures afterward of what happened to Robert Whitaker's mouth, it just makes me realize why I'm not in the sport. Like I would never take that risk to just have my teeth bent inwards. Like I'm good. I don't know exactly what did it. I don't believe it was the choke itself. Like that doesn't really make sense. Like I feel like it was like maybe something happened beforehand, a punch, an elbow, headbutt. And then when he started gripping him, and then he was like, oh fuck, my shit is like really fucked up now. But he tapped really quick in the moment. I'm sitting here screaming, why would you tap to a choke that's not in there yet? When I realized what I was seeing afterwards, I completely understood. Robert Whitaker The dude was talking, like he was just like walking around the hotel, like talking later on. Like there's a video of him talking about his mouth and like, oh yeah, it doesn't really hurt that much. It's like, dude, why aren't you at the dentist? Like, where are you right now? Like, how have you not stayed at the hospital with your mouth? Like, I don't know. So shout out to him. He's a fucking dog. But once again, if Vegas is gonna be right, man, they're gonna be right. And this was it.
Well, I want to say Rob Whittaker is one of my favorite fighters, and I felt lied to by Robert Whittaker. I felt lied to by Robert Whittaker because he said, and ostensibly the truth was, that he was training for this fight with Hamzat since the Aliskerov fight. That was in June, my guy. That was in fucking June. So he has been eyes on Hamzat since June, since the middle of this year. It is now October, the end of October. Round one, he gets taken down instantly. Like you didn't know that that was exactly what Hamzat was going to do. So what the fuck were you doing in all of that training? What was you're trying to sell to me that you have this skill set in place specifically to go 5 rounds with this guy that you know is going to come in like a bull in a china shop in round one, do exactly what he ended up doing, and then you succumbed to exactly the game plan. So I mean, dude, like I said, I'm a big fan of Robert Whittaker. He is a legend of the sport, a future Hall of Famer to be sure. But I felt lied to by this one, and that really hurt me.
I can see that. Yeah, it is kind of crazy that he did take him down instantly, but I think I saw it a different way. I was not upset with Robert Whittaker. I did not feel betrayed. I felt this is how good Hamzat is. For somebody like Robert Whittaker who has seen so much wrestling in this world. Now, to be fair, DDP caught this dude with some really amateur moves and took him down. Needless to say, Hamzat is an animal and questionable stoppage or not because it was an injury
No,
per
I mean he
se.
tapped. I mean, gotta stop
I
it.
mean, I mean, shit. The fucking listen, dislocated jaw, teeth. Listen, that's a fucking injury in my book. I don't care if you fell over like RDA. That ain't what this is. So shout out Hamzat. He did finish the fight, and he did actually get to the fight. He did come through and he's just going to keep winning, I guess. I want to see him
Well,
against DDP. That's all I have to say.
and that's the other point, I guess, that should be mentioned here is that he basically had to beat his own immune system just to get to this fight. So we'll see how long that can last because, as much as I think that it would be entertaining to see him versus DDP, should he end up winning that belt, you got to wonder how that's going to all factor in. You got this champion with the belt and then ends up getting sick. Does he end up getting stripped? I mean, he's a fan favorite with a lot of people. Where's that dynamic? You don't want to see another situation. Obviously that he's not at John Jones level, but you know what I'm saying, that you don't want to see a
Yeah.
situation where you got an inactive belt for a very long time. So just something to consider with that. You've already answered the question that you think that he deserves the title shot. I mean, over Sean Strickland, you're just given that because of the type of finishes here, the way that he's conducting himself in the cage. Is that the reasoning there?
We've already seen Strickland and DDP. It's
Yeah,
not
that's a
like
good
we're
point.
dying to see that again. I mean, could be, but I think now I want to see Hamzat versus DDP more than anything. And then if Sean Strickland and DDP got unfinished business, sure, you guys can fucking do that. But if it's about the belt thing, then Sean Strickland, you got to go through who's the champ at that time.
Right.
I know you. I know you've been crying on Twitter, and we've let you do that for a little bit. But sport moves fast. You should have been active, brother.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point too. Is that it was kind of funny to me that he immediately is on Twitter saying, "Hey guys, don't forget about me. I'm next in line. I'm next in line for this guy who didn't give a fuck about the belt, before he had it. Then all of a sudden now that's the only thing he can fucking talk about. This guy is a piece of work." But either which way, yeah, I mean, what can you say about the win? I mean, it's Hamzat doing what Hamzat does. Rob was not able to get him into the later rounds. Shout out to Elite from the Discord who said that Rob is sometimes not able to get his game plan off the blocks early enough in fights. He's got a little bit of a problem in round one. Hamzat capitalized on that instantly, as you knew that he would. So, I mean, this was really kind of textbook. We know that Hamzat can get negated when it goes later into the fight. They were talking about how he's training a little differently now, so perhaps that's helping his conditioning. He's not training to exhaustion anymore. Maybe that is going to be a factor going forward. I guess we're really just going to have to see what version of Hamzat shows up there. That's the thing with him in general, with all of the discussion that we're having. There are a lot of variables when it comes to Hamzat. You have the gas tank, you have the immune system, you've got all of his other antics outside of the cage. There's a lot of stuff that we don't have to get into there, but either way, what version of Hamzat shows up and what can his opponent do is really just the tale of every Hamzat fight, because you know exactly what he's going to do. So,
Yeah,
it got the job done.
100%.
Yeah, and we'll see if he ends up getting that title shot. That will be interesting to watch out for. All right, moving on to the main event of the evening. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, perhaps the biggest heartbreak of the year for some people.
Yeah, this was brutal, especially because Max probably went up 2-0, and Ilia was able to actually finish this one. I said this before, and we've talked about people who finish, and obviously I'm not in Ilia's corner, so I would have a different interpretation if I was. When Alex knocks people out, I'm going crazy. When Ilia knocks people out, he's leaving me speechless. Like, he's really taking everything that I have from that fighter and just it's just gone. And other people finish, like when Islam finished Dustin, like it didn't leave me fucking speechless. When Islam finished Volk, it made me mad, but it didn't leave me speechless. Like Ilia, I don't know, whatever the correlation is to like a fine tune playing, but Ilia he just does it, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issue with that is that when you're talking about the soul sucking nature of these knockouts, it's because he's doing it to the guys who were the giants of the division for so long. He's coming in here and shaking everything up. Everybody who has come across from him has been just completely zapped. So I mean, it's you can make a little bit of the case, and I think that this is really more of me just saying it as devil's advocate, because I don't really buy into it as a concept, but it's, these guys are on the tail end of their greatness. I guess there might be a little merit to it, but I mean, when it comes to Max Holloway, I literally was just saying that he looked his most evolved ever in this sport on the very last podcast that we did. So I'm like, this, you're getting the Max Holloway that you want to have against the champion. And I mean, really, I had him winning those rounds before he ended up getting knocked out. I think a lot of people did. Max, first of all, smart to not engage with Ilia with his invitation to stand and bang in the start of the fight like Ilia wanted to. But I give Ilia a lot of credit for even following through on that offer or on that promise that he had made, because he did say he was going to do that, and he fucking did. So I mean, I was like, man, Ilia, the balls are certainly there. That the confidence in Ilia Topuria is unlike anything that we've seen since Connor, possibly. I mean, the way that this guy thinks about himself and then follows through on it it's like that thing, The Secret, where it's like you will things into existence and then they, it's supposed to happen or whatever. Like, I mean, I don't know if that's what he's using or if it's just some other divine, quality that he has, but whatever it is, the man has accurately predicted every single thing that he has done so far. And that's very impressive. So I really can't take that away from him. Also wanted to say that, very nice takedown from Ilia. That was a little bit unexpected, but he picked up Max completely off the ground and slammed him. He little brothered him in that takedown. I was like, okay, I mean, not just the power, also, I think he's a black belt, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, I mean, he's got that skill set as well. He just doesn't have to use it a whole hell of a lot. I mean, what can you say? This guy is he seems to be the real deal, and it's only getting better. I think that we might have a really dominant champion on our hands here.
Yeah, and unlike the other divisions, this one is ripe with people who can just come fight for the belt. It can be can be Arnold, it can be Josh Emmett. You throw, I don't fucking care. Diego, fucking Brian Ortega can make his way back up there someday. Yair, may, I hope not, but you know, whatever. Like anything is possible with what we have right now, and we're at a, I don't know, you know, we get to a time. I think the sport obviously like revolves around itself to a point because we're at a time where it's just like power punchers, like those dudes, the dudes who can just knock your lights out one time. Obviously they have the technique and the other skills to back it up, but what they rely on most is just Alex Ilias, just like I can just knock you out, I don't have to do anything else, it's like I can just knock you out. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that Amir's making a good point with this one. He's got that rare combination of super high technique and crazy power to back it up, and he utilizes all of that so effectively. I also wanted to mention too that the shot that stunned Max before the ending sequence, not when it was actually the sequence on the other side of the cage, but the one that stunned him was a very well placed shot, and it was good of him to recognize that that was the beginning of the end, because Max is a guy that, I mean, we haven't even mentioned it or maybe briefly touched on it, but has never been knocked out. So it's like it's rare that you're ever going to see him in a compromised position to that extent. He might have gotten slightly dazed at some point in the past. I mean, he got briefly knocked down by Justin Gaethje, but I don't even know if they ended up counting that. The point is that you got a dude who is known for his iron chin, got him to that point, and then to smell blood with that, you know, not get he fights so calmly, like he's so in the pocket, which is weird because his facial expressions sometimes don't lend themselves to that. He sometimes looks a little flustered to me, and I don't know if that's just the way his face looks. You know, maybe he just kind of has that you know, that sort of the jowly sort of thing going on. He kind of does this weird frown with his face every once in a while that gives me a little bit of an odd body language vibe. But regardless, in there, he moves so nicely. He flows with everything. And when he recognized that there was blood in the water, he lands heavy. Max ends up circling out of it. So I'm like, okay, Max might still be in this to an extent. No, he was already starting to really be dazed. I thought Ilya followed through nicely on what he set up with that first punch. So it was a very nice sequence. After taking decent amount of point damage, I don't think that he ever took anything that was super crazy heavy. I mean, like, it wasn't anything. It was starting to maybe frustrate him a little bit that he wasn't finding his rhythm as early as he wanted to, but you got 5 rounds to do it, and he ended up doing it when he needed to. So it wasn't as quick as some of the you know, the other knockouts that he's had, but either which way, it was exactly as it needed to be for him. He's so good at not overextending himself, keeping measured, and, you know, landing those shots when they count the most.
This was my Vietnam. Yeah.
I can understand that, my brother. I mean, you know, I think that for some people, that was probably the feeling after Volk, which I can understand. You know, Volk, obviously, one of the most dominant champions that the sport has known, certainly the division has known. I mean, I'd still probably put him up as the GOAT of the division. But I mean, so, you know, that might have been slightly more heartbreaking. But I mean, I'm sitting on the watch along in a Max Holloway t-shirt watching Max Holloway get knocked out. Max is my absolute favorite fighter. So this was devastating to an extent for me. You know, as far as my fandom goes, this is a sport that you know, you get too invested in some of these fighters that will end up breaking your heart. But if it was going to happen, I did want to also mention that I thought Ilya was very gracious in victory. He is you know, he does a lot of dumb talking. I wish that he would be more like Max in the pre-fight, personally. Just my personal things that I like in a fighter. I don't think he needs to be, especially now that he's already gotten himself to the belt. Like, because you saw the way that he was. You know, they tried to set it up and have the Drekus versus Izzy moment in the cage with him and Volk, you know, and what did he do? He went over and gave him a big hug. He's a decent guy. Like, I don't think he needs all of this Conor McGregor style antics that he likes to do before these fights now to sell him anymore. So like, I would just like to see him be a little bit more of himself, because it does seem like he is playing a little bit of a character. But one thing that is not part of the character is his belief in himself. So all credit where credit is due on that. And I thought it was very nice that he was gracious in victory, saying what a legend Max was and all that.
Yeah, I'm actually, I give you major props for being able to stick around. Like when this happened, I
Went to go curl
felt
up in
my
a cocoon somewhere.
Well, like I felt myself like break character. Like I honestly like this wasn't just like me watching the sport. Like I really thought like I'm witnessing murder right now. Like this is Max fucking Holloway. I've seen this dude before I even knew I was a fan of the sport. Like I know who Max Holloway is. Like this dude, come on. This is why I like Hawaii. And so just watching this dude just get put into the dirt. I'm honestly, it was stopped really quick. But
Oh, come on. You
um
think early stoppage? You think early stoppage?
but Max was dead, man.
No,
Max was
I mean,
dead.
got to call a spade on that one, sadly. And again, this is coming from a guy who, Max is my favorite. I would have loved to have seen him be able to rally. I thought that he might have been able to rally after that first shot. That's why I went in on that little, section about how I thought Ilya handled that so well. Because to me, I was like, oh, when he circled out, I was like, oh, he might still be in this thing, like it would have been nice to see him put some speed into his legs and get out of there to the point of gaining himself a little bit more time, but he didn't at that point, and it was over. I mean, you gotta be honest with yourself and with what you're seeing. Yeah, it hurts though. It does hurt. These are the moments of the sport. Like I thought it was bad with Volk. It's certainly bad with Max, but again, I'm not all that mad at it though, because I do like Ilya, and I think that now that he is settling in as the champion, he's going to have a lot of high level tests. Diego Lopez is coming up, perhaps. I mean, they're like you listed a whole bunch of great guys that are possibilities there. We just got to see which one of them can actually do it. And I liked the meme that it has to be Cody Garbrandt. I think I go with the meme. Let your memes be dreams here, folks.
I I normally don't have this exact reaction. Like I said, Ilya left me speechless. And I think right after that, what instantly came over me, and I don't think I felt like this about any other champion, at least as much as this, like as hard as I do, as I feel for Ilya. Like Marab earned my respect. Okay, he beat Sean. But Ilya, he gets his flowers, man. He really has done. I can't. He's done everything that I never even said that he wouldn't. Like he was just a dude that I didn't care about, but like he knocked out the two dudes that I saw as like icons to me. Like I have to just understand like this dude is better than anybody that I've watched so far. So
Yeah. Well,
get
and
ready to
and
watch more.
yeah, absolutely. And to Amir's point, from before, I also think that this is one that he just put in the chat is a good point as well. Is that against volume punchers, he can take the shots until he finds the knockout. I think that there's validity to that. I think that a high level grappler would be somebody who could possibly give him problems. But I wanted to circle back to the initial point that he had made about me saying that Ilya hadn't been tested in the way that a champion needs to be tested in order to solidify themselves as a champion, based on Volk having just come off the knockout from Islam Makhachev. This fight brought me around 100%. I mean, because he not only did he win this fight in a devastating knockout fashion, but he was also tested in the first two rounds. Both of those two rounds, like I said, I gave them both to Max. So, just off of the pointing, it wasn't necessarily any kind of crazy heavy opposition he was facing as far as the damage level goes, but it was enough to fluster him. He got a little cut under his eye. I mean, it was enough to win those rounds, but he went out there against the best version, in my opinion, of Max Holloway that we've seen in this sport. I mean, theoretically, at least based on the BMF fight coming into this. Yeah, I mean, he is the real deal, and there's really not too much else that I can that I can say negative about him at this point. He's done everything that he needs to do now. This is another element of when I'm talking about needle moving that is completely to the positive side. Like he has moved the needle for me as much as he needs to, and he can now take his flowers, as you said. I mean, in addition to the one that he keeps in his mouth, Mr. Matador over here, and yeah, get ready for a lot more of Ilya's fights, as you said.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. I obviously don't expect him to live up to his word. His word has been, I'm going to move up to lightweight and submit Islam. And then he has also talked about moving to welterweight.
Yeah, that's wild.
Like, it doesn't even make sense. So I don't expect him to live up to that. I could be wrong. Amir, you could have 100% faith that he subs Islam. I don't think that'll ever happen. But it is interesting to see what Ilya's got next. I am very excited to see it because, like I said, I'm witnessing better than I've ever seen. I have to just come to terms with that. So next fight, I have to know that Ilya is just that guy. So
Yeah, Ilya is that guy, and we are in an era of that guy as the champion right now, at least in him and Mac, or in him and Alex, in
yeah,
my opinion, anyway. So there you go. That is UFC 308. Pretty goddamn decent card overall, I would say. I mean, a lot of heartbreak moments on there, but that is what this sport is. So good deal. Judging, not so much. But again, we talked about why that could or could not be. Let's take a quick look. We've been kind of going on for a while here, but let's just take a little preview of next week. We've got UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Albazi, a fight that I've been looking forward to for a while, only because Amir Albazi has been very inactive. And I'm just curious what version of him is going to come back against Brandon Moreno, which is why I like this matchup, because Brandon Moreno decided to take a little bit of time away from the sport, get his head right after a couple of losses. What do you think about this fight?
I think this one specifically, it kind of seems fair. Like you said, both have been out for a while. One took some time off. One's been injured. Like, so, ring rust or not, it might be a really slow first round, but it might be fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm looking
it,
forward to it. I want to
I,
see if Albazi has what he had before, because I've been hearing the criticisms that Albazi hasn't really faced the level of competition that he needs to have faced to be at where he's at in the division. In the flyweight division, which we've been talking about a lot lately, being very competitive and having a lot of new guys who are coming in with a lot of power, a lot of technicality, very, very competitive division for sure. I'd say one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive in the organization right now. So if he wants to stay where he's at and possibly get himself up to that belt in a division full of killers, he's really got to go at it with Moreno over here.
you know what I find very, very interesting, and I don't see anybody talking about this. How is Derek Lewis not headlining this?
It's a good question. Well, I mean, and Derek Lewis, not even the co-main.
Exactly. And I get it's because, like, oh, he can't, like, 5 round fights or whatever. But, like, when has that ever mattered? When has it ever mattered? We just saw him in a 5 round fight against Jailton Almeida 2 fights ago, and he just got a knockout win against Nascimento. Actually, that was a 5 round fight too. So I find that very interesting. Maybe the tides are turning. Maybe flyweights are actually profitable now. If you can headline them outside of the apex, that, like, that's very interesting to note. And then you have a woman's flyweight co-main.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because Rose is a former champion, probably is why they have that as the co-main. I would say, or I mean, as far as the headlining aspect of it goes, I mean, there are title implications for this fight. So,
True, true,
I
true.
think that those aspects of it outweigh the fan favorite nature of Derek Lewis. But yeah, I mean, having Derek Lewis not as the co-main and to have that fight as the co-main, I mean, I like Erin Blanchfield, and I think that she's got a good shot to beat Rose. I mean, she did not fare so well in her last outing, but
She's on a 6 fight win streak. Oh, never mind. Who the fuck
that
am
was
I
gonna
thinking about? I'm thinking about Macy, I think.
that might be. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Erin Blanchfield. Her only loss recently was to Manon, so I mean that's not a bad loss. That ages pretty well in the short term. If she can get a win over Rose Namajunas, then there is absolutely a potential for her to be going to that belt. So I like that fight well enough. Um, I like this fight too, though the Derek Lewis fight that we were talking about. He's
Yeah.
fighting Jonathan Denise,
It
who
should definitely end in a knockout. It should definitely end in a
yeah, I
knockout.
think it's got to, right? I mean, good lord, it really just depends on if Denise can uh, get what he wants to do off against Derek Lewis, who's going to be, I would think at this point, probably significantly slower. But I say that, and then Derek Lewis might come out with another flying knee. So who the fuck knows, right?
Derek Lewis being an underdog, I'm taking it. I'll take it.
I think that there's good dog potential in that. I mean, you count out Derek Lewis, and then he comes out and surprises you. But I would certainly put Derek Lewis at this point in his career in the same camp as an Anthony Smith or an Angela Hill. To me, not for the style of fight or any of that kind of stuff, but just as far as betting goes, it's too unpredictable. You don't know which version of him is going to show up after the loss streak that he was on. He sort of course corrected a little bit thereafter, but I mean, if I'm doing a bet on Derek Lewis for this one, it's going to be straight money and short money. I'm not parlaying that.
Yeah, I'm looking at this card, man. There's a couple of other names that I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, well, shout
Moving
him out.
down, moving down. Not that Caio Machado dude. I know who he is, but I'm not the big. I don't care about that fight. Mark Andrew though, I
Yeah,
do like.
Barrio.
I do like him. He's kind of an animal. So
Yes,
I like that he's the favorite. I'll probably put some money on him.
that's a winnable fight for him for sure against Dustin
Yeah,
Schwartzboots. Yeah,
yeah, and then that's the dude who just got. Oh, wait a minute, he's gonna lose. That's the dude who's got the nerve damage in his face from Bruno Fajeda.
that is correct.
Okay, so moving past him, we got Mike Mallet. He only fights in Canada, it
Hey,
seems.
proper Mike coming back after one of the worst fucking turn of a fight that I've ever seen in my life. I can't. Mike, you're gonna have. Let me say something about this fight real quick. Mike Malott, you have a lot of ground to recover after the fight with Neil Magny, because I have not. I mean, you're always at this point, at least in the recent memory, and what I go to when things like this happen. You are the prototype of a dude who let a fight that was completely yours, slip through your fingers because your gas tank depleted in a moment's notice. I have never seen a turn on a dime quite like that in that fight. So Mike Malott has a lot to prove against Trevin Giles, who is, I mean, not necessarily the greatest, but he's not a slouch. So, I mean, this is a fight that Mike Malott really needs to win if he wants to course correct after that atrocious loss that he ended up taking that he didn't have to.
Yeah, and then so moving down, we got Pedro Munoz and Zahabi dude. What does he look like?
Eamon
What's his
Zahabi
name?
fighting again. Yes, man, I didn't
What
know
the
that he was
fuck is
still
his
fighting.
name? What's the Ariel? That's who he looks like.
Oh yeah,
Ariel Hawani. And then Pedro Munoz. Do love my guy Pedro.
I thought that Eamon Zahabi was retired. We were just watching Eamon Zahabi on the fucking 237 or whatever.
217.
217. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
That's
so
all that.
it's
That's crazy.
kind of crazy. I thought I didn't realize that he was still fighting. Good for him.
And then Charles Jourdain, of course. You know what I like
There's
about this
Jourdain.
card that I'm seeing?
Mm.
I'm seeing very close to the line, and I normally don't like that, but I'm starting to think like, oof, well, this is where I come in clutch because I do watch these fighters. I do know Pedro Munoz. If he comes in at a -20 and the other guy's even odds, that might be a good steal because I think Pedro Munoz is gonna win. Next, Charles Jourdain, same thing, -115. The other guy's not a heavy favorite either. It's like Vegas doesn't know anything more than me. So Charles Jourdain is probably a good pick, even though he just got knocked out by Jean Silva.
I mean, he's always that's always going to be the potential. Is
Yeah.
I know Victor Henry. What's the I really I think about Victor Henry a lot because I believe he was the guy was that also in Abu Dhabi? I think it might have been where he got the shot to the nuts that ended up where the doctor was telling him that he didn't get kicked in the
Oh,
nuts.
that was him. That's
I think
funny.
that might have been him, but yeah, apologies if my memory is mistaken there. I think that's what that no contest is. Yeah, it was. Yeah, on the Makachev Volkanovski card. But yeah, so I mean, regardless though, I mean, he's I see he got a knockout of Ronnie Yaya, so I mean that's decent, I guess. But I always just I bring all of that up to say that Charles Jourdain, his chin is very questionable, so be careful there.
Yeah. And then next we got Jack Shore and Yusuf Zalal. Jack Shore coming off
Love
that
this.
weird leg TKO, right? That
Yep.
was him. Yep.
Yes, it was. And Yusuf
Yeah.
Zalal coming off of victory after victory, and I mean, looking like a quite evolved version of Yusuf Zalal compared to the first stint that he had in the organization. I've been loving Yusuf Zalal's fights lately, so I'm really looking forward to that one. That might actually be the fight that I'm looking forward to the most on this card.
And then Series City. Ooh,
Let's go.
that dude's really fucking good.
Versus Garrett Armfield. That's a good fight.
I I actually I really like this city, dude. Like I really do. Shout out to Ukraine. Honestly, you don't see many from him, but like this dude might have he has a lot of good things that I look for in fighters, and I hope to see him evolved from what I saw him the first time.
Absolutely. Yo, Clonky, thanks for checking in, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we gotta give a shout out to the longtime friend of the channel, personal friend of mine, Cody Gibson, going up against Chad and Helliger. This is one that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Cody, I think. I mean,
No,
I don't, you don't think so?
no, he's way shorter than Cody. Cody does great when he has shorter opponents on him. He's just going to get him down on the ground, body triangle. You know how good it is. Come on.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like this is an absolutely winnable fight. I just think that Helliger can give him some problems on the ground, perhaps. So I think there's potential for it. I mean, you're right that Cody does do well against guys that he's bigger than. But I mean, Brad Katona was a lot smaller than him. So
Yeah, but I still think that I think Cody won that one in my opinion. I thought that was a
yeah,
close coin toss. But
absolutely. Don't get it
I
twisted.
don't
Cody Gibson is the ultimate fighter.
exactly. And I just really I could see Cody just coming out here and Cody's striking is it's not I don't want to say reckless, but it's very haphazard. Like he will go out there and strike, and this dude is just one of those dudes that I think he could get over with. And if he doesn't want to strike with him and they start grappling, Cody's definitely going to win there.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, best body triangle in the sport. So yeah, go out and get the win, Cody. We're all rooting for you for sure. So
100%. And then the females here, I don't even know who they are, but first fight of the night, I might throw some money on it. We'll see.
yeah, right on. This is actually a really decent little fight night that Canada's getting. I like this out
I
there in
agree.
Edmonton, Canada, home of the Oilers hockey team. So good stuff. Yeah, and when these fights happen, of course, you know that you can come right back here next Monday for us to talk about each and every one of them. This show generally starts at 9 o'clock. If it does not, it will start later than 9 o'clock. I will let you know the start time always on Instagram and on Twitter at Yama Show. You can watch us on our individual watch alongs. I do a watch along right here, generally with the Vitz King. That is also at Yama Show on Twitch, Kick, and Trovo, in addition to YouTube. And Chase Parton, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
You guys can find me doing watch alongs and making predictions videos on youtube.com/@CP Smalls. And if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Creative Parton, Partin.
Make sure you follow my boy for more fighter antagonization. There will be a new Yama episode coming out later this week. Keep your eyes out for that. That is all that we got for you today, everybody. Thanks to everybody who's been hanging out with us in the chat. We appreciate all of you guys. Make sure that you give it a like if you enjoyed the stream. Helps us out a lot in the algorithm, gets the stream out to more people who might enjoy it. But until next time, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the fights as they come up. And most importantly, fight on.
Game.